I was born plain looking, my mind slow to turn, a world apart from my elder sister. By the year I came of age, my sister set up a challenge platform before the mansion, saying she'd find me a perfect husband. The Prince of Cheng and the heir both thought it was her own betrothal event, and scrambled to step up. After the heir won, he only then realized it was for me. He must have feared embarrassing my sister, so he gritted his teeth and accepted the match. After we married, he wasn't cruel to me, but he wasn't warm either. Everything was kept separate, clear as day. We slept in separate rooms, ate separate meals, even washed our own clothes. He said that's how all couples lived. I was slow-witted. Whatever he said, I believed, jotting it all down in my heart, obeying without question. It wasn't until later, when I heard my sister was pregnant, that I realized husbands and wives were supposed to share a bed and eat together. That night, I hugged my pillow and knocked on his door. He got angry, scolding me out without mercy. If I hadn't mistaken it for Ying's betrothal, I'd never have stepped up. Since I've already reluctantly married you, don't harbor any improper thoughts. If your foolishness passes to our child, wouldn't that make my offspring a laughingstock for life? When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day of the challenge, watching his eyes light up as he looked at my sister. I shook my head like a rattledrum. Sister, I don't want him. He's not even as good-looking as you. 01. My sister saw Xiao Jingyan's face suddenly darken, his brow furrowing slightly as if sensing something off. Nian Nian, you don't fancy the heir Xiao. Look at him's decent enough. Broad-shouldered and long-legged. If you ever need to pick a high fruit, you could stand on his shoulders to reach it. If anyone dares bully you, just him standing there would dare stretch out a claw. I looked up at Xiao Jingyan. He stood in the middle of the challenge platform, his face taut, lips pressed into a thin line. Sister. But he's not as handsome as you. My sister paused. I'm already plain. If I marry someone ordinary looking, and we have a child, wouldn't it be a little ugly? Before the words even faded, Xiao Jingyan's ears were already red, his fists clenched and unclenched in his sleeves, as if holding back, before he finally ground out through his teeth. Sun Yenan. You. He swallowed the rest, took a deep breath, and turned to my sister, softening his tone. Ying, I thought today was your betrothal, so I stepped up to try. Since it's a misunderstanding, I'll make amends. I can find another good match for the second young lady, one that'll satisfy her. But my sister didn't accept it. She simply raised a hand and pointed to a wooden sign on the east side of the platform. Heir. It's written there in black and white. Today, we're seeking a son-in-law for the second young lady of the Su family. You didn't even glance up. Stepped up. Won. And now you want to back out. Fine. At least our Nian Nian doesn't fancy you. Xiao Jingyan followed her gaze. The sign stood upright at the platform's edge, the ink still wet. His Adam's apple bobbed. His face cycled through red and pale. But he had nothing to say. The Prince of Cheng, Lu Yenji, laughed, strolling over with a fan, his tone carrying a hint of amusement. Heir. The second young lady is a bit simple, but it's still a good match. Why not marry her? Xiao Jingyan shot him a cold look. If the prince admires her so much, why not marry her yourself? Lu Yenji spread his hands, smiling openly. I lost. My sister's face darkened. She raised a hand. Show them out. Several household guards stepped forward and politely but firmly escorted Lu Yenji and Xiao Jingyan out. The excitement on the platform dissolved like that. 02. Back in the room, my sister took my hand, her eyes full of regret. Nian Nian. It was my oversight. I forgot that this betrothal thing has to be what you want. If you don't like today's match, I'll find you another. If I can't find one, I'll keep you for life. It's no big deal. I leaned into her embrace, my nose stinging, my eyes burning hot. I held back the tears, refusing to let them fall. In my past life, my sister had arranged this same betrothal feast for me. Our Su family had been generals for generations. Father was the general of the northern frontier, who died in battle, his body still warm. my sister took up his mantle, disguised herself as a man, and went to war, bleeding through several battles. In the final one, she personally took the enemy commander's head, the day she returned triumphantly to the capital. The emperor learned she was a woman. Instead of punishing her, he bestowed on her the title of Minjing General, causing a citywide uproar. As soon as she came back, she busied herself arranging my marriage. In that past life, on that day, just because I glanced at Xiao Jingyan once, my sister deliberately lost to him. He couldn't bear to see her publicly humiliated, so he accepted the match on the spot. After marriage, he wasn't harsh to me, but everything was kept separate. We slept apart, ate apart, washed our own clothes. He said that's how ordinary couples lived. I was slow-witted. After marriage, I memorized every rule he set, guarding them carefully, never daring to step out of line. Once, I caught a chill and was burning with fever. The maid called a doctor and then hurried to the study to inform him. I curled up under the covers, waiting a long time, only to receive a single reply. Busy with official matters. Let her rest well. I truly thought I was being unreasonable, bothering him with such a small illness. Later, one day, I passed by the study and peered through the half-open window. It was cold and empty inside. The brush, ink, paper, and inkstone were neatly arranged, but lifeless, devoid of any warmth. Thinking it over, I went back to my courtyard, picked a few chrysanthemums I'd planted myself, arranged them in a celadone vase, and quietly placed them on the corner of his desk. I thought maybe seeing them would lighten his mood. But by evening, Xiao Jingyan came to find me. His face as dark as a storm cloud. He threw the vase of chrysanthemums into the yard. The petals scattered everywhere, dirty and broken. Who gave you permission to enter my study? From now on, without my permission, don't set foot inside. I crouched on the ground, picking up the shattered petals one by one. As I did, a thought struck me, and I looked up at him. Then why is my sister's portrait allowed in your study? Husband. Xiao Jingyan froze for a moment, his gaze sharpening abruptly. You're seeing things. Don't you dare say that to anyone else. Your mind has always been less than sharp. Even if you did say it, no one would believe you. I stared at him blankly, a dull ache rising in my chest for no reason at all. That night, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. I stared at the embroidered patterns on the tent canopy for a long time, turning things over and over in my mind. Maybe I really did see wrong. After all, I've always been slow, since I was little. What others could see, I often missed, and what others overlooked, I somehow held onto in my heart. Those things I could never tell if they were real or not. 03. Until one day, my elder sister became pregnant and accidentally fell into the water, nearly losing the baby. Xiao Jingyan dropped everything he was doing and rushed me to the Zhenbei Marquis' residence. His brow was etched with a kind of anxiety I had never seen before. I watched his profile, a vague unease stirring inside me. Only after confirming that my sister was safe did his expression ease. He waited quietly in the outer room. I sat by my sister's bedside, watching her gently touch her belly, her eyes and brows soft with tenderness. I reached out and touched it too, a flicker of envy blooming in my heart. My sister noticed. She called for the physician to examine me as well. The physician shook his head. There was nothing yet. Disappointment washed over me. When the others had left, I tugged at my sister's sleeve and whispered, "Sister, how does a baby get into the belly?" My sister paused. Then her eyes widened. "Nian Nian, haven't you and the heir shared a bed?" It dawned on me then. So husband and wife were supposed to sleep in the same bed and eat at the same table. That night, back at the manor, I grabbed my pillow and knocked on Xiao Jingyan's door. When the door opened, he saw me like that and heard my request. He was both embarrassed and annoyed, shoving me out with a firm hand. From behind the closed door, his voice came, low and restrained. If it weren't for the misunderstanding that it was Ah Ying's marriage selection, I would never have stepped onto that stage. Since I've already been forced to marry you, don't harbor any delusions. If your dullness were passed on to our children, Wouldn't they be laughed at for life? I stood in the corridor, hugging my pillow. The night wind was cool, and I hung my head, feeling sad. 04. But the truth is, I wasn't born slow. When I was 8, on the 15th day of the first lunar month, my sister took me to buy sugar cakes. She let go of my hand to take the warm, steaming package. In the blink of an eye, someone covered my mouth from behind and shoved me into a carriage. That person was an enemy spy who had been watching our Sioux family for a long time. They captured me to threaten my father, to force him to retreat from the battlefield or hand over the city defense maps. Back then, I wasn't the dull, confused person I am now. My father was a great general. The emperor trusted and relied on him. If he lost this battle, the court would punish him. The people would curse him. If the border gates fell, how many children my age would lose their parents, lose their homes? I thought it over and over. When the spy was distracted, I bit down hard on his wrist. He cried out in pain and let go. I tumbled off the galloping horse. My head hit a sharp stone. Everything went black. And I knew nothing more. My father seized that moment of chaos and ordered the archers to fire. When I woke up, it was 3 days later. From then on, I became a little slow. I was slow to respond, slow to think. When others spoke, I often had to pause before I understood. My sister never brought it up in front of me, but I knew she always blamed herself. She said if she hadn't insisted on buying those cakes that day, if she hadn't let go of my hand, the spy would have taken her instead. She was quick and brave. She wouldn't have let the enemy succeed. 05. In the end, Xiao Jingyan did come to visit with gifts. Prince Cheng, Lu Yenji, somehow got wind of it and followed him into the manor. When my sister came out to greet them, her eyes swept over the heavy chests Xiao Jingyan had brought, and her brow furrowed slightly, but she was unusually warm to Lu Yenji, nodding at him and ordering tea to be served. You said you came to apologize, but aren't you apologizing to the wrong person? My sister sat in the host's seat, her tone cold and hard. The one you need to apologize to is Ninian, not me. She pointed at the chests. Daggers, short blades, whips, spears. Which of these can Ninian use? What she likes are sweet cakes, sugar figurines, spinning lanterns, and wooden doves that coo. Lu Yenji added lazily from the side. You can't even get the target of your apology right. It seems this sincerity isn't very genuine. Xiao Jingyan's ears turned slightly red. He lowered his gaze. His posture humbled. It was my mistake. I'll prepare new gifts. I'll make sure the second miss is satisfied. But I was already crouched in front of the chests, rummaging through them one by one. I looked up and said to my sister seriously, "Sister, I actually like them." The dagger's hilt was set with a ruby as big as my thumb, bright and shiny. I could pry it off and sell it for quite a bit of silver. That whip, though not as handy as the one my sister used, would be more than enough for the coachman to drive the carriage. And that spear, wow! The shaft was dark and heavy, the tip glinting with cold light. It was really beautiful. My sister couldn't use it, but if I propped it up in the yard, it would make a perfect clothes-drying rack. My sister's weapon of choice was a sort of 3-foot blue blade she never let go of. Lu Yenji clapped his hands, and his attendant brought forward a long, narrow wooden box. He took it and opened the lid in front of everyone. Inside lay a sword. The scabbard was plain, a pure silver white. When he pulled it out an inch, a cold gleam flashed. My eyes lit up. I couldn't help but lean in for a closer look. It was shiny and incredibly sharp. This is a belated Kamingafage gift for you. Lu Yenji pushed the sword case toward my sister. His tone was casual, but his gaze was earnest. You were still fighting at the border at the beginning of the year, so I missed it. I'm making up for it now. It's not too late, is it? My sister reached out and ran her hand over the scabbard. Thank you, Your Highness, she said. 06. When Lu Yenji was young, he had studied martial arts under my father for a few years. He and my sister could be considered childhood friends. When they stood together and talked, their manner was familiar and natural, leaving no room for anyone else to squeeze into the conversation. I lifted my eyes quietly, catching a glimpse of Xiao Jingyan standing to the side, his hands tucked into his sleeves, his lips pressed into a tight, straight line. A flicker of gloom passed through his eyes. I stuffed a piece of osmanthus cake into my mouth, chewing slowly, and suddenly, I began to understand. So from this moment on, he already liked sister. Too bad sister didn't like him. And I didn't want him as my brother-in-law either. In my past life, I had a craving for a bite of creamy custard, but Xiao Jingyan always had someone stop me, saying in front of the whole table. A princess consort being so gluttonous, what kind of example is that? I'd sneak to eat under the eaves, but he'd still have the servants watch me, forbidding me from taking even one more piece. Such a stingy man didn't deserve my sister. I lowered my head, broke off another small piece of osmanthus cake, and stuffed it into my mouth. The sweetness lifted my mood. Lu Yenji said the treasure pavilion was auctioning a set of gold thread soft armor today and invited sister to come along and appraise it. Sister pondered for a moment, then turned to Xiao Jingyan and tossed out a flat. The heir can head back first. Then she walked out the door shoulder to shoulder with Lu Yenji. I held the plate of unfinished osmanthus cake, about to head back to my room to enjoy it slowly, when a voice suddenly came from behind me. "Second miss, please wait." I turned around. Lu Yenji had somehow come back. 07. He stepped closer, clasped his hands in a formal bow, his expression much more serious than before. "About yesterday I was rash. I shouldn't have gone up to compete without asking first. It was an offense. My apologies." I blinked and said nothing. He paused, then added, "If I had actually accepted that marriage arrangement yesterday and married you, neither of us would have been happy. And the days wouldn't have worked out. Marriage should be built on mutual affection. A forced melon isn't sweet. I hope second miss understands." I nodded, broke off another piece of osmanthus cake, stuffed it into my mouth, and mumbled, "I know, you like sister. But sister doesn't like you. If you force yourself to be with her, you won't be happy either." His face stiffened, a look of awkwardness washing over him as if his thoughts had been exposed. "You. Does second miss always speak so sharply?" Xiao Jingyan took a deep breath. "I saw it too yesterday. And let me win that match on purpose. Second miss has a pure heart. In the future, find a husband from a simple family with a gentle temperament, and your days will be easy. Playing with butterflies and picking peaches with him, that'll be joy enough." I swallowed the last bite of pastry, looked at him, and said, "Thanks for the concern, heir, but I already have someone I like." He froze, the shock in his eyes too raw to hide. "You? Like who?" His tone carried a hint of disbelief. I tilted my head. "I like." Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Xiao Jingyan's hand clench inside his sleeve until his knuckles turned white, as if he were holding his breath without realizing it. I shifted my tone and smiled. "I'm not telling you." He snapped out of it, shook his head with a wry laugh. "I'm overthinking. You're a simpleton, always stuck in the manor, never going out. Who could you possibly like?" Before I could speak, Qing Dai beside me couldn't hold back anymore. "That's not right, heir. Our second miss isn't a simpleton. She's clever, at least clever enough to know that you're not a good match." Xiao Jingyan's face darkened, his gaze sweeping coldly over Qing Dai. "This maid has a sharp tongue. Can't you even discipline a servant properly?" Qing Dai wasn't an ordinary maid. She had once followed sister through life and death battles, serving as her right hand on the battlefield. Later, her wrist was injured, and she could never wield a sword again. She was also an orphan, with no family to return to. So I asked her if she'd be willing to stay and keep me company. She said yes, and I treated her like a sister. When he insulted Qing Dai, it hurt me more than if he'd insulted me. The plate of osmanthus cake in my hand was empty. Without a second thought, I hurled it straight at his forehead. Xiao Jingyan covered his forehead, staring at me in disbelief. Get out. I pointed at him. Fierce and angry. I'm mad. I'm telling sister. His face shifted, but he still lowered his voice in submission. It's my fault. Don't tell Aang. I stretched out my palm. Then apologize. 1,000 taels. And I won't tell sister. Xiao Jingyan's eyes went wide. You're extorting me. Extorting. 08. Qingdai taught me that people's apologies are all empty talk. Silver is the real deal. I thought she was right. So I stepped forward, held my hand out even more boldly, and said, "Are you giving it or not?" He stared at me for a long time, as if trying to figure out whether I was genuinely dumb or just faking it. Finally, he pulled a few banknotes from his sleeve, counted them, and handed them to me, his tone a little flustered. "So, you won't tell Aang?" I took them, felt the thick stack, tucked them happily into my chest, and nodded firmly. "Okay." Xiao Jingyan turned and took a few steps, then stopped to glance back at me, muttering under his breath, "Who could you even like? Even a fool learns to lie." My ears were sharp. I called out to his retreating back, if you call me a fool again, I'll get mad, and it'll be another 1,000 taels next time." He stumbled, nearly tripping, and fled in a panic. I pulled out the banknotes and counted them again, my mood soaring. Qingdai gave me a thumbs up from the side. When sister came back from the treasure pavilion, she was cradling a celadon vase in her arms. Its glaze as warm and smooth as jade. She said she knew I liked growing flowers, so she bid on it specially for me to use as a flower vase. I held that vase, turning it over and over, my heart brimming with joy. I carefully placed it on the windowsill, counting the days until the little daisies under the eaves would bloom. 09. These past few days, Xiao Jingyan had been visiting quite often, showing up at the manor every few days. On the surface, he said he came to discuss matters with sister. But he always carried a food box filled with signature pastries from various shops in the city, all for me, almost as if he were really trying to make amends. Sister's attitude toward him had softened a bit too. A few days ago, when she heard him mention a jade coral in his manor, she perked up and asked a few more questions. The very next day, Xiao Jingyan eagerly delivered that jade coral to our doorstep. Sister took it, looked it over, then turned and had someone carry it straight to my room. "Nian Nian. Take a look at this. Remember when Miss Wu laughed at you for not having a red coral? I got you a jade one instead. When you invite her over to admire it, she'll be green with envy. This treasuride had my eye on it in my past life too. Back then, Xiao Jingyan gave it to my sister on the day she gave birth. My sister, feeling sorry for me, passed it on to me instead. When Xiao Jingyan found out, his face darkened on the spot, right in front of the whole room full of people. He ordered the jade coral smashed to pieces, saying I had no class, that I would even snatch things from my own sister. I watched those shattered pieces of jade, each one impossible to pick up, and my heart ached so badly it made me gasp. If I'd sold it, how much silver would it have fetched? What a wasteful, reckless thing. 10. The little daisies under the eaves finally bloomed. Tiny flowers huddled together, trembling in the breeze. I carefully picked out the best ones, cut several stems, and arranged them in that celadon vase, hugging it close. I headed out the door. Qingdai caught up and asked, "Miss, where are you going?" "To deliver flowers." She followed me all the way, watching as I crossed 2 streets and stopped right in front of the Jing'an Marquis' mansion. She panicked. "Miss, those daisies were raised by your own hands. Why are you giving them to that thing? He doesn't even like them." I pulled the vase closer to my chest and straightened the crooked stems. "He does." Qingdai stomped her foot in frustration. "Miss, our eldest Mrs. Military Camp is full of fine young men, strong, skilled in martial arts. You could pick a husband. If one doesn't work, take 2. If 2 don't work, take 3. Then, when you want to play mahjong, you'd have a full table. At meals, one could wipe your mouth. Another could feed you. At night, someone could wash your feet and rub your shoulders. How wonderful would that be?" I stared longingly at the closed gates of the mansion, Qingdai's words drifting through my ears. But my mind was elsewhere. What Qingdai described sounded nice enough. But I wanted the best one. That night in my past life, after Xiao Jingyan threw me out of his room, I was crushed. I hugged my pillow and cried as I stumbled through the darkness. It was pitch black. I took a wrong turn and, in a daze, pushed open a door. Inside, the lamplight was dim and yellow. A man lay on the bed, his face flushed, sweat beading on his forehead, as if he was enduring something. I leaned in for a closer look and froze. He was stunningly handsome, with a faint resemblance to Xiao Jingyan. His brows and eyes were like a painting, his nose straight, his lips a deep red from the fever. I remembered Xiao Jingyan saying his eldest brother, Xiao Jingheng, had been in a foul mood ever since returning from Yangzhou. His health was poor, and he had an episode every month on the 10th. He warned me to stay far away, so I wouldn't anger him and get a beating. But standing there by the bed, I looked at him, then thought of myself, and a sudden idea popped into my head. If I had a baby with him, how beautiful that child would be. Xiao Jingyan had said that any child born from a simpleton like me would also be simple, laughed at and looked down upon. But I thought, even if the child were simple, if it was born beautiful, a single smile would melt anyone's heart. And no one would dare mock it. My sister always said that beautiful people get by anywhere they go. If Xiao Jingyan saw that child smiling at him, with curved brows and eyes as lovely as his brother's, he might even like it. With that thought, I stepped closer and asked him, "Can you make a baby with me?" Xiao Jingheng, weak and tormented, snapped his eyes open at my words. He stared at me intensely for a long moment before rasping, "Do you even know what you're saying?" "I do. I want to make a baby with you. The most beautiful baby." Then, while he was too weak to move, I pulled out the little booklet my sister had given me from my sleeve, opened it to the first page, and followed along as I went. It was clumsy and awkward, but the outcome was good. After that, I often went to see him, climbing through windows and over walls like it was second nature. He always thought I was just some little maid from a corner of the mansion, seeing me in plain clothes. He said he wanted to marry me. I told him I already had a husband. Xiao Jingheng frowned. "That husband of yours must be utterly useless, not even consummating the marriage after all this time. I'll give him a sum of silver and send him packing." I said, "Sure. My husband's name is Xiao Jingyan. I'll ask him how much he wants." When Xiao Jingheng heard that name, he froze as if struck by lightning, not moving for a long time. When he came to, he grabbed my wrist, his tone dropping. "He's not worthy. Leave it to me to handle." But before he could handle it, Xiao Jingyan was stabbed to death while suppressing bandits in the south. I became a widow, and later gave birth to a child. That child was born with delicate features, so beautiful it was unreal. He. And he wasn't simple. 11. I was lost in thought when the gate suddenly creaked open from the inside. A face slowly emerged through the crack, cold and clear, like frost on snow. My eyes lit up. I ran over joyfully and thrust the vase into his arms. "For you." Behind me, Qingdai gasped. "Ah. That's not the young master. Miss, come back. That's the Marquis." I didn't care. I stood on my tiptoes and pushed the vase closer to his chest. "Do you like it? It's for you." Xiao Jingheng looked down at the daisies in his arms, studying them for a long moment. His fingertip gently brushed one of the blossoms. Just as he was about to speak, an angry voice cut in from behind. "Sun Yenan, who told you to deliver flowers? I don't even like daisies. Take them away." Xiao Jingyan had somehow come out from inside. He glanced at the vase in Xiao Jingheng's arms and sneered. "Can't even get the delivery right. Truly a fool." Xiao Jingheng pulled the vase closer to himself, dodging Xiao Jingyan's reaching hand. "She gave them to me. I like them." Xiao Jingyan's hand froze midair. "Brother, she's a fool. When did you even meet her? Didn't you just get back from Yangzhou?" "Oh. Right. It hit me then. Xiao Jingheng had just returned from Yangzhou. He didn't know me yet. I quickly stepped forward, straightened my back, and announced loudly. My name is Sun Yenan. I'm 17. I live at the Zhenbei Marquis mansion. My sister is the formidable General Minjing. If you take me, I'll share half my pastries with you, and half my bed. My pet Fubao, you can pet him too, beside me. Qing Dai was so nervous she was hiccuping. Miss, hic, this is the Marquis. I mean, he's good looking, but, hic, who taught you to send flowers like this? I learned it from storybooks. The book said, when you see someone handsome, you gotta strike early. Or else you won't even get the scraps. Xiao Jingheng let out a laugh. I felt the world spin around me, everything blurring into the distance, and I had to swallow my drool a few times. And now, we're acquainted. Xiao Jingyan's face turned even darker. Brother. She's simple-minded, how could she be fit to be my sister-in-law? The smile on Xiao Jingheng's face faded, a thin layer of menace settling in his eyes as he shot him a cold glance. Whether she's fit or not is my business. What's it to you? When he turned back to me, his tone softened considerably. Go home and wait. I'll come find you another day. I nodded, then remembering something, quickly turned and tugged at Qing Dai's sleeve. Qing Dai, tell the beauty our address. Qing Dai stammered out a string of words, her face reddening all the way to her neck. Xiao Jingheng listened, gave a slight nod, glanced at me once more, and then climbed into the carriage, cradling that crooked little bouquet of daisies. Xiao Jingyan stood at the doorway, his face shifting between pale and green, watching me beam with delight. He hurried off after his brother. Brother, listen to me. The carriage began to move slowly. Qing Dai let out a long breath. Miss, you really are. Really am what? Really, bold. 12. My sister found out about me giving flowers to Xiao Jingheng. She was sparring with Lu Yenji in the courtyard at the time. At the news, her hand slipped, and her sword veered half an inch off course, nearly slicing off half his sleeve. Lu Yenji leaped back 2 steps, catching his breath and sheathing his sword in shock. When he turned to look at me, his expression had completely shifted. Nian Nian has her eye on the Jing'an Marquis. I heard he had an accident years ago, damaged something vital, and became impotent. That's why he passed the heir title to Xiao Jingyan. Nian Nian, maybe you should pick someone else. What's the point of having something you can only look at but not touch? Can't touch. I blinked, recalling that night on the bed, his sweat-dampened hair on his forehead, his bobbing Adam's apple, his white-knuckled grip on the sheets. Anne instinctively retorted. The Marquis has such a soft face and such long hands. Where exactly can't you touch him? My sister swung a punch at Lu Yenji, sending him stumbling backward. Shut up. She turned to me, a rare look of deliberation on her face. Nian Nian, that Marquis, 3 years ago, he injured his body, and when he came back from Yangzhou on business this time, he was poisoned. The imperial physicians couldn't figure it out at all. Maybe you should pick someone else. What about Lu Yenji? With me watching over him, I'm sure he'll treat you well. Lu Yenji quickly waved his hands, his neck turning red with panic. No, I can't. The one I like is your vice commander, Qingshuang. My sister glared at him in annoyance. Then why did you show up at the tournament that day? I was just filling in for my older brother. He was stuck out of town and couldn't make it. I thought it was your matchmaking event, so I jumped in first. My sister paced in frustration, finally stopping and fixing her gaze directly on me. Nian Nian, do you absolutely have to have Xiao Jingheng? Looking at her serious expression, I couldn't help but ask in a small voice. Is he very expensive? Lu Yenji chimed in from the side. Expensive? He's just a vase, pretty but useless. My sister was silent for a moment, then suddenly clenched her fist. Fine. A vase it is. At least he's nice to look at. With his condition, no one would marry him anyway. Being Olivian's son-in-law is actually a bargain for him. At worst, I'll set up a few mistresses for you on the side. As long as you're happy. Lu Yenji nodded along. Makes sense. He's still easy on the eyes. 13. My sister was a woman of action. She immediately ordered the servants to inventory the dowry in the storeroom, changed her clothes, and headed straight to the palace. I sat under the eaves waiting for her return. The sun crept from the east to the west. Qingdai shelled a plate of melon seeds for me. As I nibbled, I grew drowsy and dozed off, my head resting on the table. By the time my sister came back, the sky had already darkened. She strode into the courtyard, grabbed a cup of cold tea off the table, and gulped it down. Then she slammed the cup back down and uttered a single word. Done. I rubbed my eyes and sat up. What's done? I traded my military merits for Nyan's marriage decree. So she had gone to the palace today to ask the emperor to make the decision. At first, when the emperor heard she wanted to take a husband, he nodded, saying that with just the 2 orphan girls left in the Su family, taking an Olivian son-in-law was only proper. But the moment he heard the candidate was the Jing'an marquis, he nearly dropped his teacup. He said improper 3 times, claiming my sister would be cutting off the family line and betraying our father, who died on the battlefield. My sister clarified that the marriage was for her younger sister, not herself. The emperor hesitated for a long time before finally summoning Xiao Jingheng for questioning. To everyone's surprise, he agreed. My sister reached out and patted my head, her palm warm and steady. Nyan, the marquis is handsome, but my sister is no less than him. Once you're married, remember this. You are the master, and he is the one who married in. If he ever dares to put on airs or throw a tantrum, just whip him once and see if his skin isn't too tight. With that, she turned, took a whip down from the rack, and handed it to me. It was a pitch-black, glossy leather whip, its handle wrapped in silver wire, and fine barbs embedded along its length. I quickly grabbed it and clutched it tightly, nodding emphatically. Got it, got it. In my past life, I had whipped him too. That time, he was in some kind of fit, locking himself in his room. I climbed through the window and found him curled up on the bed, trembling all over, so I gave him a light lash with the whip. He looked up at me, surprise and joy flickering in his eyes. He grabbed my hand and pulled it toward his own waist, telling me to do it a few more times. I did, and he ended up working me like a mule, making me toil all night long. My sister's whip had barbs on it. It looked even more satisfying. Xiao Jingheng would surely love it. 14. Xiao Jingyan must have caught wind of the marriage decree. He stormed into the Zhenbei Marquis' estate. When he burst in, I was squatting under the eaves, feeding Fubao some pastries. How can you marry my brother? I was so startled by his outburst that I thought I'd seen a ghost in broad daylight. Is it not allowed? His face went ashen at my words, his lips trembling several times before he could force out a sound. When did you first meet my brother? Didn't he just return from Yangzhou? Was it at a palace banquet before? Did you see him there? It must have been. But that was 3 years ago. You've remembered it all this time. Xiao Jingyan suddenly stopped, his gaze fixed on me, muttering to himself. Could it be that in your past life, you married me because you saw me as a stand-in for my brother, Sun Yenan? You fool, you actually know what a stand-in means. He rambled on and on. I pricked up my ears and listened for a good while, but I could barely catch a few clear words. All I noticed was that his face shifted from pale to green, like a quick-change artist performing. I didn't want to entertain his muttering anymore, so I asked him, Young master, could you take this pastry to your brother for me? Xiao Jingyan froze. I pointed at Fubao, the chubby yellow dog squatting by my feet, and take Fubao along too, so your brother can get to know his face. From now on, walking him, bathing him, and brushing his fur are all his jobs. Let him figure out my Fubao's temperament as soon as possible. He looked down at the pudgy dog, which was wagging its tail and sticking out its tongue at him. A vein bulged on his forehead. You're using me as an errand boy. Do I even exist in your eyes? That question struck me as odd. I was clearly looking right at him as I spoke, both eyes wide open. How could he say I didn't have him in my sight? If you won't help, fine. I'll have Qingdai deliver it. Xiao Jingyan closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and when he spoke again, His voice carried a note of caution. Nianan, do you know my brother? He's not capable. If you marry him, you'll only be a widow in name for the rest of your life. I reached out and pulled the whip from my waist, swinging it at his arm without a second thought. He stepped back, covering his arm with a grunt. His eyes wide with shock as he stared at me. Don't speak ill of my husband. I coiled the whip back. You're not married yet. His face flushed red. Have you no shame? I scratched my nose. My sister hasn't agreed to marry you yet. And you come to our house every day. Where's your shame? Xiao Jingyan was choked silent. After a long pause, he relented. Nianan, my brother is only good-looking. I share a third of his features. If you nod, I'm willing. Willing to marry you, but only as a secondary wife. My primary wife must be a cultured, intelligent, and outstanding woman. Someone like you. Can't handle it, but in the future, I won't let you suffer too much. At least I'll ensure you have food and clothing and live a stable life. Suffer. 15. Images from my past life flashed through my mind in a blur. Xiao Jingheng lifting me up to pick the highest peach. He played rock paper scissors with me. And every time he lost, he took off a piece of clothing. When he was down to just his inner robe, I collapsed onto the couch laughing. He didn't get mad, just pulled me into his arms and rubbed his nose against my forehead. And our daughter born like a little snowball. Her eyes and brows a perfect reflection of him. On the day I was dying, he said nothing. He only entrusted our daughter to my sister, then took a knife and slit his own throat. His last words before closing his eyes were, "In the next life, remember to give me a title. Don't let our daughter call that man father again." I snapped back to the present, looking at this man still waiting for my answer. The more I looked, the more displeased I felt. Young master, you're so plain-looking. Any child born from you would probably be a little monster. I wouldn't want that. When Xiao Jingyan left, he must have been furious. He lifted his foot and kicked the stone lion by the door hard. But the lion didn't budge, and he yelped in pain, hopping on one foot as he hobbled to the carriage. Qing Dai happened to see it and doubled over laughing. She followed my orders and sent Fu Bao to the Marquis's mansion. When she returned, her expression was strange. I pressed her for a while before she stammered out. The Marquis said. He said he'd take good care of our son. Our dog's son. He called Fu Bao our son. Those words from his mouth somehow sounded so pleasant. So, under the pretense of checking on Fu Bao, I started visiting the Jing'an Marquis mansion every few days. Xiao Jingheng had somehow found a pastry chef. And every time I went, there were new treats on the table. I sat across from him eating pastries while he reviewed documents at his desk. Occasionally, he'd glance up at me. His eyes landing on the corner of my mouth. He'd naturally reach out, gently wiping away the crumbs with his thumb. When his fingertip touched the corner of my mouth, I felt that patch of skin tingle. My heart pounded so fast it felt like it might leap out of my chest. But Xiao Jingyan always showed up at the worst times. Officially, it was to discuss family matters, review accounts, or plan ancestral rites. But every time he walked in and saw me sitting there eating pastries, his face darkened by 3 shades. He'd either claim urgent business requiring a private talk, finding ways to shoo me out, or he'd belittle me outright, calling me stupid, ignorant of rules, and only good for eating all day. Xiao Jingheng never let him finish. He'd simply say out, without even lifting his head. Xiao Jingyan would stiffen his neck, ready to argue more, but Xiao Jingheng would set down his brush and look at him. In the end, I'll be marrying into the Su family. I belong to Nianan. You're just the brother of a man marrying in. What right do you have to boss her around? From now on, show her some respect. Otherwise, that whip in her hand won't spare you. Brother-in-law. Xiao Jingyan shut his mouth and slunk out. 16. Fu Bao, on the other hand, was living it up at the Marquis mansion. He and Xiao Jingyan seemed born to clash. Every morning, without fail, he'd dash to Xiao Jingyan's bed and leave a warm puddle of morning urine. Then, when Xiao Jingyan went out, he'd chew up his clothes hanging outside. Once, Xiao Jingyan returned late at night. As he walked, Fu Bao shot out from some corner, knocked him flying into a nearby flower bed, covering him head to toe in dirt. Xiao Jingheng wrote to me, saying Fu Bao was a good boy, rewarding him with several braised pork knuckles. The little guy ate until his belly was round and now wagged his tail at Xiao Jingheng, practically treating him as his real father. 17. One day, a letter suddenly arrived from the Marquis mansion, saying Xiao Jingheng wanted me to come over, that he had a surprise for me. I turned the newly acquired jade pendant over in my palm, rubbing it for a long while. A coincidence. I thought I was just about to give him a surprise too, but when I reached the entrance of the Marquis' estate, it felt quieter than usual. Even the gatekeeper was nowhere to be seen. I stepped inside, and as I rounded the screen wall, Xiao Jingyan suddenly popped out from some corner and blocked my path. What are you doing here? None of your business. I couldn't be bothered with him, so I brushed past and kept walking. His eyes were sharp. They caught sight of the jade pendant in my hand, and his face shifted instantly. That pendant. For my husband. I lifted my chin. You don't get one. He stumbled back half a step. His gaze locked onto the pendant, muttering, so it was you who gave him that. Big brother said it was from his beloved. I froze for a second. Then it hit me. In my past life, I'd given Xiao Jingheng that same pendant. He adored it, carrying it close to his chest every day, rubbing and playing with it. Later, Xiao Jingyan saw it and asked where it came from. He only said flatly, "From my beloved." Xiao Jingyan didn't press further. Now, he must have pieced it together. It was like a slap to the face. And he gritted his teeth. You too. Shameless. My hand moved faster than my brain. The whip at my waist lashed out again. Don't you dare curse. This time. Xiao Jingyan was ready. He sidestepped, the whip's tip grazing his sleeve and missing. He steadied himself and let out a strange, bitter laugh. Sun Yenan, do you really think Big Brother wants to be with you? He only joined your family as a son-in-law because he had no choice. But do you know who he truly loves? I do. I lifted my head proudly. His mouth twitched, a hint of mockery in his smile. Sun Yenan, you're stupid, naive, and not much to look at. Big Brother might be frail, but he's not blind. Why would he love you? I stood there, my fingers tightening around the whip's handle. That stung. It really did. But I didn't believe him. I knew whether Xiao Jingheng loved me or not. In my past life, he'd hold me in his arms on the bed, whispering over and over that he was crazy about me, that he wanted to get rid of that annoying Xiao Jingyan always hanging around. He was such a cold, aloof person, but when he said those things, his eyes burned hot, even through my clothes. I could feel his heart pounding hard and fast. Xiao Jingyan saw I wasn't speaking and took it as a sign I was wavering. He grew smug. A few days ago, Princess Ningyue came back. She was married off to Huainan years ago, the one Big Brother always held dear. They missed each other for so long. And now her husband's dead. She's back in the capital with her only child. The emperor pities her and allowed her to remarry. Tell me, if she asks for Big Brother, would the emperor agree? And she has a child. Since Big Brother can't have his own, that kid could be like his own. Perfect. Isn't it? A sharp pang shot through my chest. It hurt, even though I trusted Xiao Jingheng. Hearing his name tied to someone else still stung. I didn't want to listen anymore. I headed straight for the study, but Xiao Jingyan blocked my way, stretching out an arm. I can't let you ruin things between Big Brother and Princess Ningyue. I lashed out with my whip again. This time, he caught it and grabbed my wrist. Xiao Jingyan had trained in martial arts. He was much stronger than me. I struggled, but couldn't break free. Panic and anger swelled inside me, my eyes burning hot. I hated how useless I was. Just then, a flash of yellow burst from the flower bushes nearby. Fubifat as he was, but agile, lunged straight for Xiao Jingyan's crotch, mouth open, ready to bite. He was terrified, yanking his hand away and leaping back just in time to dodge the snap. Mad dog, I'll kill you. Xiao Jingyan, furious and humiliated, raised his foot to kick Fubao. But Fubao darted left and right between his legs, spinning him in circles, never letting him land a single blow. Seizing the chance, I turned and ran for the study. As I burst through the door, I saw Xiao Jingheng sitting at his desk, a woman leaning close beside him. They were so near, whispering like they were sharing secrets. Their tone was intimate, their posture natural and inseparable. My eyes reddened instantly. I rushed over and snatched the brush from his hand. It was one I'd given him a few days ago, with a crooked little daisy carved on the handle. This was my gift to you. I'm taking it back. Xiao Jingheng was caught off guard. He looked up to see my face streaked with tears and stood up at once. Nianen, why are you crying? Was I crying? I wiped my face with my hand. It was wet. I remembered what my sister had said. Tears are precious, not to be wasted. If you're wronged, fight back. She'd have my back even if the sky fell. I sniffled and stopped crying. No more tears. Later, I'd have my sister come and beat them up. Xiao Jingyan too. Xiao Jingheng took my hand, his voice full of concern. Nianen, who bullied you? Princess Ningyue was stunned for a moment, then looked me up and down, rubbing her hands together with a smile. So you're Miss Su, the second daughter, the future wife of the Marquis, Fubao's mother. Fubao's mother. I blinked, tears still clinging to my lashes. Not understanding, Princess Ningyue grabbed my hand, pushing Xiao Jingheng aside. Hello, Fubao's mom. I'm here shamelessly to beg for a puppy. Ling Ermi Sun saw Fubao a few days ago and fell in love with him. He's been pestering me to come to the estate for a pup. But the Marquis said he's just a foster dad and can't decide. I'd have to ask the pup's mother. I stared blankly. You want a pup? Py. She nodded eagerly. Fubao snuck into my place the other day, and Ling Er wouldn't let him go once he held him. That's why I'm here, shamelessly begging. Just then, Fubao came bounding in, tongue lolling, his round belly jiggling, and Dove at my feet, rolling and playing. I was lost. But Fubao's a male. Can a male have puppies? Princess Ningyue's smile faded. Male. Then, could we find Fubao a mate? We could split the puppies half and half. Xiao Jingheng said flatly. No. Fubao doesn't like arranged marriages. Princess Ningyue choked on her words, then resignedly waved her hand and left. 20. Once she was far enough away, Xiao Jingheng turned to me and asked, why did you come over? I was confused. Didn't you call me here, saying you had a surprise for me? I glanced around the study. There was nothing but the 4 treasures of the study and shelves packed with scrolls, not even a decent-looking box. Where's the surprise? Something dawned on Xiao Jingheng. His expression flickered, and he immediately summoned a guard, giving a low command. Take the young master to the ancestral hall. Administer the family punishment. Then come back and report. The guard acknowledged the order and left. He turned to me, lifted his hand to cup my chin, tilted it up gently, and pressed a soft kiss at the corner of my eye. His lips were warm, like freshly baked osmanthus cakes. This is the surprise. I swallowed hard, my earlobes instantly burning red. Fumbling, I pulled the jade pendant from my chest and pressed it into his palm. This is my surprise for you too. Xiao Jingheng glanced at the jade pendant, his fingertips lightly tracing its surface. A flicker of depth passed through his eyes before he tucked it into his sleeve. On my way back, I made a detour to the ancestral hall and peeked through the crack in the door. Xiao Jingyan was lying face down on a long bench, his buttocks swollen and raw, skin split open, a pitiful sight. After I'd seen enough, I left, thoroughly satisfied. It took Xiao Jingyan over half a month to barely heal enough to get out of bed. The first thing he did was rush to the Zhenbei Marquis' residence to find my sister, saying he was willing to marry me in place of his older brother. My sister let out a derisive snort. Young master, there's nothing wrong with your body, but whether my Nian wants children or not, or whether she even wants to give birth, that's none of your concern. If she truly wanted one, I'd give her one myself. Who says she has to bear it? And what do you mean by willing to marry Nian for my sake? Do I even know you well? Are you even worthy? She looked down at him with a cold, haughty gaze. Your brother at least managed to become a Livian's son-in-law. You don't even qualify for that. Xiao Jingyan's face flushed crimson with shame. He wanted to argue, but not a single word came out. Finally, he tucked his tail between his legs and slunk away. 21. After my sister's engagement to the eldest prince was settled, she turned her attention to arranging my wedding. The date was set for the 18th of the following month. Qing Dai had consulted the almanac and declared it an auspicious day, perfect for a wedding. On that day, my sister dragged me out of bed early to dress and make me up, giving me endless instructions. Remember, today you're the one marrying him, not the other way around. Keep your back straight, step firmly, and once you're inside the marquis's gates, don't say a word, just take his hand and lead him out. I brought Qingshuang, Lu Yanji, and Qing Dai along. Our group marched in full force toward the Jing'an Marquis's residence. No one in the household dared to stop us. We passed through unimpeded. Xiao Jingheng stood in the hall, his head covered with a red veil. I stepped forward, took his hand, and was about to lead him across the threshold when I suddenly stopped. I let go and took half a step back. No, you're not my husband. Qing Dai was startled. Miss, what's wrong? I recognized Xiao Jingheng's hand. In my past life, those hands had traced my back countless times, had delved into the deepest parts of my body. These hands before me were also long and fair, but the knuckles were wrong. The palms were too soft, too thin. The figure under the veil stiffened. I repeated myself, where is my husband? Footsteps sounded from the doorway. Another Xiao Jingheng, dressed in the groom's ceremonial robes, stepped through the door. His face was cold and dark. He swept a glance at the veiled figure in the hall, then raised his hand and waved. Take him away. Several guards stepped forward and yanked off the veil. Beneath it was none other than Xiao Jingyan's flushed red face. You wretched bastard! Slipping something into my tea, trying to impersonate me. The guards dragged Xiao Jingyan out as he struggled and twisted, shouting back, Brother, why can you be with Sun Yan and I can't? She was supposed to be mine. Before he could finish, Xiao Jingheng kicked him square in the chest, sending him flying. Xiao Jingyan, who do you think you are, to even dream of Nian? Xiao Jingyan clutched his chest, coughing twice. He propped himself up on the ground, lifting his head with a hoarse, defiant voice. At least I can make her happy. I can give her children. I can keep her from being gossiped about, from being caught in rumors. Xiao Jingheng looked down at him with disdain. What you can do, I can do too. Xiao Jingyan's eyes went wide. Aren't you supposed to be unable to? It was cured long ago. That poison I got in Yangzhou, it was neutralized after I returned. Xiao Jingyan clenched his teeth, refusing to give up. When did you start coveting Nian? 3 years ago, at the palace banquet. I suddenly remembered that banquet. That day, I had been hiding behind a pillar in the corner, holding a plate of pastries my sister had given me. I ate one, then secretly hid another for Qing Dai, just as I was stuffing my face. Crumbs all over. Xiao Jingyan walked over with someone and pointed at me. Big brother, this is Ying's little sister. Dull and clumsy, completely useless. The pastry in my hand hovered at my lips. I didn't know whether to eat it or put it down, overwhelmed with shame, wishing I could shrink into a crack in the floor. But that young man stopped and looked at me. Miss Su has her own virtues. You don't see them, that's just your poor judgment. I thought at the time he was just being polite. So it was him. 22. Xiao Jingyan's face turned pale. You were already drawn to her back then. Xiao Jingheng admitted it openly, without a shred of concealment. I discovered Nian's worth first. Why shouldn't I be drawn to her? You've only just noticed now. Too late. He walked over to me and took my hand. Xiao Jingyan, I know my wife is wonderful. But you. Just try and find out. After we were married, Xiao Jingyan showed up at the Zhenbei Marquis's residence every few days. One day it was to discuss business. The next he claimed to have brought tonics for his brother. There was always an excuse. Xiao Jingheng was so irritated his temples throbbed. In the end, he went to my sister for help. Without a second thought, my sister waved her hand and had him dragged off to the military camp, saying they needed a runner and it would be good to toughen him up. And so Xiao Jingyan was shoved into a grain convoy heading south. But he ran off halfway. When they passed through Ruzhou territory, he happened to run into the same band of thugs from his past life. One blade fell. And once again, his soul returned to the underworld. Now, let me tell you the second story. The moment I was born, everything around me was a blur of warmth and chaos. Like soaking in a hot spring, lazy and comfortable. My whole body limp and at ease. Noise pressed in from all sides. Someone was screaming at the top of their lungs, telling me to push. Someone else was crying. A frantic voice urged, "Your Majesty, Empress, you must give it one more effort. The little master is almost out." Another voice, hoarse and weary, pleaded, "Lady Lin, hold on for me. If you deliver this child safely, I will pardon the Lin family's past crimes." And then, softer, almost broken, even if it's a stillbirth, let me at least see it once." That voice was raw and exhausted, carrying a humility no emperor should ever have to show. I tried to open my eyes, but a massive force shoved me forward. Above me, a woman's scream tore through the air, agonizing and sharp. Someone grabbed my ankle and pulled. My chest grew tighter and tighter. The suffocation of near death pressing in, forcing me to struggle instinctively. I pushed with all my might, following that pull, until light suddenly flooded my vision. "It's a little princess," the midwife said, her voice bright with joy at first, but then it twisted into a shrill, terrified shriek. "She's not breathing. No breath." The room fell into dead silence. Everyone knelt, trembling, their foreheads pressed to the ground, not daring to make a sound. Heavy footsteps approached slowly, carrying the sharp, cold scent of sandalwood. Someone picked me up. His hands were shaking, his finger pressed against my nose, then jerked back as if burned. He staggered a step, his voice cracking beyond recognition. "Bury my royal child in the imperial mausoleum with full honors." On the bed, the frail, beautiful woman, her face already pale as death turned ashen in an instant. The last glimmer of light in her eyes flickered out. The Dowager Empress, who had rushed in just in time, heard those words and her eyes rolled back as she nearly fainted. The palace attendants caught her just in time as she beat her chest and wailed, "My precious granddaughter, heaven above, why must you treat the great Zhou's Xia clan so cruelly?" 1. Full honors. I just come out. I wasn't ready to leave yet. At that critical moment between life and death, I mustered my last shred of strength. I opened my mouth and let out a weak cry, thin and pitiful, like a kitten's mew. The man holding me jolted violently. He lowered his head, staring at me with burning intensity. His face, covered in stubble, leaned in close. Hot tears splashed onto my cheeks, one after another, so hot they made me frown. "The Imperial Medical Academy. Are they all dead?" My child cried. "She's still breathing." He fumbled frantically to unwrap the swaddling clothes, pressing his ear against my chest, listening over and over. His voice shook uncontrollably. "Daughter, if you live, your father will never take another life. I'll eat vegetarian and chant sutras to build merit for you." The stubble scratched my skin raw. I flailed my tiny hands in protest. The imperial physicians, who had already prepared themselves for a death sentence, surged forward like men possessed, each taking my pulse in turn. "There's a pulse now." How strange, just moments ago it was so faint it was nearly gone. But now it's growing stronger by the second. Dequan, the head eunuch, always quick to read the room, immediately prostrated himself and shouted, "Your Majesty's boundless fortune. The ancestors' blessing." The little princess's blessings run deep and long. Seeing that I had pulled through, Xia Jingyuan was overjoyed. He waved his hand grandly. "Rewards. Everyone on duty today will be rewarded." A pair of warm, gentle hands wrapped me back in my swaddling clothes. I smacked my lips and drifted into a deep sleep. The king of hell had told me I'd accumulated great virtue in my past life. So this time, I was here to enjoy the good fortune. So I was reborn as the great Zhou dynasty's only little princess, that poor child in the original story who died the moment she was born. My father, the emperor, had been injured on horseback in his youth. Despite having 3,000 beauties in his harem, he was nearing 40 with no heir. He prayed to gods and Buddhas, donating to every temple in the land, begging heaven to grant him a bloodline. Empress Lin, desperate for favor, had used a secret elixir to force a pregnancy with me, but such a fetus was inherently unstable. Add to that her enemies' scheming, and I was born prematurely at just over 7 months. The original owner hadn't made it, died the moment she emerged. My father, having begged his entire life for a single child, only to watch it die before his eyes, had his personality warped from that day forward. He became cruel and tyrannical, waging wars and slaughtering without mercy. Later, he was reformed by a reborn group favorite female-led, adopted her as his daughter, handed the great Zhou Empire over to the male lead, and ended up torn apart by 5 horses. A miserable, bloody end. 2. A newborn's life was nothing but eating and sleeping, a hazy blur of days. On the day of the 3rd day bathing ceremony, I was jolted awake by the bitter, fishy taste in my mouth. Bleck. What the hell was this disgusting stuff? The wet nurse holding me trembled all over, her voice quivering. The little princess. She won't drink the milk. Perhaps it's because of the medicine in the breast. I forced my eyes open. All I saw was a blur of light and shadow, like looking through frosted glass. A figure in bright yellow robes took me from her, his voice calm and flat. Drag her out and behead her. No. Send her out of the palace. Bring the next one. Ah. It must have been the blood bond, because I recognized him instantly. My father. The emperor who loved his child like his own life. I blew bubbles and flailed my tiny claws, trying to grab his beard. I wanted to get a closer look at his facito, see if the skill I'd had in my past life for reading feng shui and fortune was still there. But I was too small. My vision too blurry. I could only make out a deep, shadowed hollow between his brows. Xie Jingyuan felt the liveliness of the little thing in his arms, and his heart had already melted into a puddle of water. Right then and there, he wanted to pull out an imperial decree and appoint me crown princess. De Quan, the head eunuch, rushed to stop him, his voice urgent. Your Majesty, you mustn't. Why not? Xie Jingyuan gently wiped the drool from my mouth, his tone carrying the natural arrogance of an emperor. The empire I built with my own hands, if I don't leave it to my own daughter, should I just hand it over to those daydreaming imperial clansmen? Her Highness's bloodline is supremely noble, but there's an old saying in my humble village: a child too young cannot bear great fortune. This old servant fears it might bring harm to Her Highness. I tilted my head, trying to see the speaker's face, but it was still a blur. Fine. The emperor, who had never believed in gods or spirits, broke his own rule and withdrew the decree. When my child grows up safely, I'll pave the way for her then. At that time, I had no idea what an earth-shattering decision my father had just made. The palace had seen no joyous occasions in years, even for a little princess. The 3rd day bathing ceremony was held with grand spectacle. Guests tossed copper coins and silver pieces into the bathwater. Hearing the clatter of all that money, I couldn't help but drool. So much money, affected by my tiny infant body. My mind was gradually regressing into childishness. When boredom struck, I would endlessly spit up milk, sending Xie Jingyuan into a frantic panic. Is the child unwell? The Empress Dowager, a woman of experience, placed a warm, jade Luo collar around my neck and reminded him. Emperor, perhaps your precious granddaughter is missing her mother. Take her to see the Empress. The old woman's eyes were kind, her face beaming with smiles as she looked at me, as if I were the most precious treasure in the world. She was old, yearning for the simple joy of playing with her grandchild. She had donated countless incense money to temples, praying for the emperor to have an heir. Now that her wish was finally fulfilled, her joy was beyond measure. 3. Neither my imperial grandmother nor my imperial father were particularly fond of my mother, Lady Lin, but loving the house and its crow. They had recently deigned to give her a few kind looks. My mother's embrace was initially warm, as I nursed at her breast. I could feel the gentle stroke of her fingertips and a faint trace of affection. But that affection was laced with too many other things. After grandmother and imperial father left, as I drifted in a haze between sleep and wakefulness, I heard a woman's voice muttering, laced with resentment, "I nearly gave my life to bring you into this world. Why couldn't you have been a prince?" Late at night, a figure crept silently up to the cradle and placed a baby wrapped in a dragon-patterned swaddling cloth inside. I was jolted awake. Opening my eyes, I only caught a glimpse of a peach blossom-shaped birthmark on the ear of a strange infant. Just as I was about to let out a wail, a cloth handkerchief was pressed over my mouth. "Kaiyun, what are you doing?" Fortunately, Empress Lin beside me hadn't been sleeping soundly. She threw back the bed curtain and let out a sharp rebuke. The maid, Kaiyun, knelt down, unhurriedly. She drew a letter from her sleeve and said in a low voice, "Your Highness, this is an order smuggled out from prison by the Marquis and the young master. The little princess is so frail. She might not last a few days before she withers away. It's better to exchange her for the healthy young lady from your maternal family, to preserve a bloodline for the Jiang family. Rest assured, Your Highness, newborns all look alike. As long as we are clean about it, no one will find out. Wu, don't take me away." I flailed my tiny arms desperately, trying to stir my mother's pity. After Empress Lin finished reading the letter, a note of hesitation crept into her voice. But she is my only daughter, Your Highness. The Marquis and the young master are still in prison, waiting to die. If the worst should happen, the young lady is the young master's only remaining bloodline. Besides, you and His Majesty may still have other children in the future. It was probably that last sentence that swayed her heart. My beautiful mother was silent for a very, very long time. Finally, she closed her eyes and uttered a single word, her voice filled with sorrow. "You, find her a good family." My heart sank like a stone, as if an invisible hand had seized it, squeezing the breath from my lungs. So, the taste of being abandoned. It still hurt, no matter how many times you experienced it. 4. Moonlight lay like a thin veil, lazily draped over the vermilion palace walls. I lay inside a narrow food box, listening to the data of footsteps outside. My mind was already spinning through 800 different schemes for returning one day to expose the fake princess's identity. But this tiny, weak body was too unreliable, jostled and shaken. I couldn't fight off the drowsiness and drifted into a deep, unconscious sleep. When I woke again, the sky was tinged with the first pale light of dawn. River water lapped against the shore stones with a loud splash. The maid, Kaiyun, scooped me out. Her upturned phoenix eyes held a cruel glint. "My little master, don't blame me for being heartless. Only with you dead can the young lady enter the palace safely. Only then can I be worthy of the young master's trust. Help me." So it wasn't a baby swap, she was going to kill me outright. I gathered a breath in, driven by pure survival instinct, let out an earth-shattering wail. Kaiyun ignored it completely. She raised her hand to throw me into the rushing river. At that critical, hair-raising moment, 2 black-feathered arrows shot through the air, piercing straight through her wrist, one after the other. 5. Ah! The woman screamed in agony, her hands going limp. I felt my body plummet downward, only to land in a familiar, reassuring embrace. The faint scent of sandalwood washed over me. Xie Jingyuan was trembling uncontrollably. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, betraying countless sleepless days and nights. So close. I was so close. The attending physician scrambled frantically off his horse. Trembling, he took my pulse before finally letting out a sigh of relief. "Your Majesty, the little princess is unharmed. She has only caught a slight chill. Please rest assured." Hearing this, Xie Jingyuan didn't hesitate. He stripped off his outer robe, wrapped the tiny bundle tightly, and carefully handed me to the newly arrived wet nurse. I was so hungry my stomach was pressed against my spine. Instinctively, I opened my mouth and sucked hard. After all, he was a man destined to one day unify the realm. My imperial father quickly regained his usual composure and authority. Without even a glance at the ashen-faced Kaiyun, he simply ordered his shadow guard. I once made a vow to take no more lives. Take her back for a thorough interrogation. I want to know who is behind the plot against my child. As for all involved, if they have children, those children shall be reduced to slave status and exiled to the western barbarian lands. For 3 generations, they shall be barred from the imperial examinations or official positions. When this decree was issued, it sent shockwaves through the court and the countryside. Countless people cursed under their breath. Kaiyun was just an ordinary maid. She couldn't withstand the Shadow Guard's brutal torture. Soon, she confessed and implicated the Jiang family. But who would believe that a mother would stand by and watch her own child be taken away and sent to her death? So when Kaiyun claimed she had acted on her own, and that the Empress knew nothing, almost no one suspected a thing. Upon hearing the news, Lady Lin pretended to be overcome with grief and fainted on the spot. When she came to, she grabbed Xie Jingyuan's hand, crying like a pear blossom drenched in rain. "The child, Your Majesty, our child is gone. Don't be afraid. I had people watching all along." Xie Jingyuan, suspecting nothing, comforted his wife in a soft, gentle voice. But the very next moment, he added the Jiang family to the exile list. The Empress Dowager had originally come to persuade her son to show mercy, but after hearing that I had nearly died, she flew into a rage on the spot. She raised her hand and smashed a sandalwood table to pieces. "These parasites! Why are you still keeping them alive? Emperor, have you been cultivating your virtue for so long that your heart has gone soft? Truly, a grandmother after my own heart." She bent down, gently stroking the soft, fetal hair on my head, then muttered in lingering fear. "Thank goodness my precious granddaughter is blessed with deep fortune. In the future, you will surely achieve far more than your imperial father." Xie Jingyuan stood nearby, nodding in wholehearted agreement. "When a Bao is a bit older, I'll bring her to court with me." The mortality rate among imperial children was high, so no formal name was given, nor was one entered into the imperial genealogy before the age of 1. Thus, my father gave me a pet name Bao. An emperor's life was a whirlwind of memorials and council meetings. But whenever my father found a spare moment, he'd come see me, terrified that his only seedling might vanish again. I was raised in the Phoenix Cry Palace, surrounded by a swarm of nannies and maids. Empress Lin rarely showed her face. Unlike my father and grandmother, who wore their affection openly, her feelings toward me were tangled a mess of resentment, guilt, but not a shred of love. Not every parent in this world knows how to love their child. Her heart had already been given to her exiled brother and grandfather, so it was only natural she had none left for me. As time crawled by, my vision sharpened. No longer a blurry patch of static. My father had a long beard, and I could faintly trace the handsome lines of his youth, but his eyes were sunken, and the hollows beneath them the unmistakable mark of a man doomed to have no heirs. Good grief, I didn't even need to look at my own face to know the odds were stacked against me. I kicked and squalled, my tiny foot shoving away his face as he leaned in for a storm of kisses. "Ah, my little one is greeting me." Xie Jingyuan laughed heartily, pulling out a golden-laid anklet and slipping it onto my chubby leg with practiced ease. 6. I'd imagined assassination, poisoning, but I never dreamed I'd nearly die as a pawn in my own mother's bid for favor. Empress Lin had a nemesis in the harem, the young and stunning consort Qiao, deeply beloved by my father. She was arrogant, quick to clash with the Empress, and it was routine. Once, she even pinched me on the sly, cackling as she did, "When I have my own child, they'll be far cuter than this little girl." I stared at her rosy-cheeked, peach blossom face, lost in thought, a horizontal wrinkle across her nose bridge, a sign of multiple lovers. Interesting. Every time my father headed to Consort Qiao's palace, Empress Lin would send someone to intercept him. Tell him the little princess is gravely ill. That little wretch must not have her way. Let her know that only I am worthy of bearing the imperial heir. She had her maids undo my swaddling and left me out in the freezing snow. Only satisfied when my little face flushed red with fever. The wind bit like knives. And I sobbed, shivering uncontrollably. Old Nanny Gui couldn't bear it and tried to reason with her. But Empress Lin just patted her belly and said, "This child is a curse to my Jiang family. Every time I think of my father and brother suffering in the western wilds, I can't bring myself to love her. Better to conceive a prince as soon as possible. Once I could crawl and walk." It became a pattern of falls and bruises every few days. Sometimes, she'd slip me medicine that gave me a stomachache just to make my father linger longer in Phoenix Cry Palace. Xie Jingyuan only thought his daughter was naturally frail. And the worry had him pulling out half his beard. Me, helpless, pitiful, and utterly alone. I had to complain. Take it straight to the top. Otherwise, I'd end up a sickly mess for sure. I threw myself into learning to talk. And before I knew it, my first birthday banquet arrived. 7. Xie Jingyuan, eager to show off his only child, loosened the restrictions on which ministers could attend the palace feast. A crowd showed up. Their gazes were a mix of curiosity, envy, and suspicion, but not a hint of goodwill. The maids dressed me in a red cloth tiger hat, its fuzzy ears sticking up from my head, making me look round and festive. One sycophantic minister immediately exclaimed, "The little princess is the very image of a child of fortune from the immortal's court." I grinned at him, flashing my 2 tiny baby teeth. Good eye. But there were whispers behind my back. "She's just a girl. Why is His Majesty making such a fuss?" Exactly. If she were a little prince, that'd be different. If you ask me, it'd be better to adopt the Prince of Zhao's son. Music and laughter filled the air, cups clinking. Soon, it was time for the traditional object-grasping ceremony. The guests laid out a long table covered in red silk, piled with items: books, bows, jewelry boxes, hairpins, everything you could imagine. Empress Lin casually slipped a jade bracelet off her wrist and tossed it onto the table, utterly disinterested. My grandmother, on the other hand, smiled and placed a fist-sized pearl on the table. "See if you like this, my dear grandchild." The emperor himself slowly set the imperial seal on the table, his stern face softening. "Abayo, come take this." Gasps rippled through the hall, under the burning weight of everyone's eyes. I stood up, a round glutinous rice ball wobbling my way over to Xie Jingyuan. I grabbed the corner of his bright yellow robe and said slowly, "Abayo. Grabs daddy. Adults make choices. A child takes nothing." The most powerful ruler in the world froze, his eyes suddenly reddening. While my father's emotions were still raw, I clumsily rolled up my sleeve, revealing the deep and shallow bruises on my arm, and pouted, "It hurts. Daddy, can you tell mother not to hit Abayo anymore? Abayo will be good. I promise." Empress Lin, standing nearby, went pale. The entire hall erupted in shock. 8. She lunged forward, grabbing my arm. "You foolish child. What nonsense are you saying?" I curled up, covering my head, and squeezed out 2 crocodile tears. "Wah wah. Abayo knows she was wrong." Xie Jingyuan's face turned ashen. He summoned the palace staff around me and questioned them one by one. When he learned that new bruises kept appearing on me without reason, his fury exploded. He berated Empress Lin harshly, stripping her of her phoenix seal and palace authority. "If you can't even care for a child, how can you govern the 6 palaces? The Empress will reflect on her actions in Phoenix Cry Palace." Empress Dowager Chu, her face twisted with anger, added without mercy, "Spread my decree. The Empress shall not set foot outside her palace without an imperial summons." It was house arrest in all but name. Empress Lin tried to defend herself. "Your Majesty, please, let me explain. Abayo is my only child. How could I hit her? Someone must be sowing discord behind the scenes." From the crowd, Consort Qiao covered her mouth with a delicate laugh, pouring oil on the fire. Your Majesty, how absurd. Everyone knows the maids in Phoenix Cry Palace are the most obedient. They all praise you for your discipline. Your Majesty. She turned to Xie Jingyuan, her eyes shimmering. I know how to raise children. Why not entrust the eldest princess to my care? Xie Jingyuan, his eyes full of pain, lifted me into his arms and replied coldly, that would still be your failure as a mother. From now on, I will raise a Bao myself. With that, he turned and swept out of the hall, carrying me in his arms. I peeked my little head out from over Father Emperor's shoulder, staring at Empress Lin, who had fallen to the ground with a face as pale as paper. That face, once so noble and dignified, now bore the unmistakable signs of decline. 9. Spring fades quietly, and the coming year shines bright. Before I turned 3, I lived in the Taiji Palace. When I grew a little older, Father Emperor built the Crown Princess's hall right next to it for me. Xie Jingyuan, who couldn't even hold a baby at first, had now become a seasoned dad. He could steadily untangle my hair, wash my hands, and bathe my feet. He rarely let the palace servants handle my care, but raising a kid there were always moments of frustration. When he saw me dip my hands in ink and crawl across his memorials, leaving layers of black paw prints, he roared, "You little rascal, stop that right now." I raised my little black paw and shouted, "Fun, baby wants to play." The commander of the Shadow Guards, dressed in black, stepped into the imperial study just as I was riding on top of Father Emperor's head, causing his already thinning hair to get even sparser. Your subject, Shen Ji, pays respects to your Majesty. May the little princess have boundless blessings. I stopped what I was doing and looked over curiously. I saw a strikingly handsome face, so beautiful it was hard to tell if it belonged to a man or a woman. With a fierce aura around the brows, Xie Jingyuan snorted, "If you hadn't come back, I'd have thought you died out there." But his tone carried an unmistakable warmth. Shen Ji chuckled softly, "Your Majesty flatters me. I ran into some trouble earlier and lost my memory, which delayed my return." I asked, "Daddy, who is this?" Father Emperor's eyes lit up. He shoved me into Shen Ji's arms and said, "This is your uncle Shen Jino. You should call him second father." Shen Ji froze for a moment. I found a comfortable spot in his arms, let go of the mushed-up mung bean cake I'd been squeezing in my hand, and held it up to his mouth, cooing, "Second father, have some cake." Shen Ji's peach blossom eyes curved into a smile. He didn't mind the cake that had been crushed into paste by a toddler's hands. Instead, he took a small, careful bite, as if it were something precious. "The princess is clever. One day, she'll make a fine crown princess." My handsome second father needed to report to Father Emperor about the corruption investigation in Qinzhou. I got bored and slipped off to play with a puzzle ring, occasionally sneaking a whole piece of cake into my mouth. When Shen Ji stood up to leave, he said, "Your subject still has duties to attend to. I take my leave." I hesitated for a moment, wondering how to tell the adults that if second father left now, he might never come back. The blood-red aura of doom had already formed on his face. His death was set for tonight. Seeing him already at the door, I didn't have time to think. I ran over, my little feet thumping, and grabbed the hem of his black robe. "Baby wants to play with second father." No matter how much the others tried to coax me, I wouldn't let go. When they pushed too hard, I opened my mouth and wailed. Shen Ji was in a hurry to get to work, but he couldn't bear to scold the first child who had ever been so close to him. In the end, Xie Jingyuan waved his hand helplessly. "Fine. Take her to your place for a couple of days. Then bring her back." 10. This was my first time leaving the palace. I sat on Shen Ji's horse, bouncing excitedly and looking around, shouting every now and then, giddy up, run faster, horse. Your subject's home is humble. I'm afraid it might be beneath your highness's dignity." Shen Ji was still trying to persuade me to go back to the palace, when I saw a vendor selling candied hawthorn skewers passing by. My eyes lit up. I pointed and yelled, "Candied hawthorn." I want candied hawthorn. Shen Ji, who had been talking to himself, fell silent. He reined in the horse and resignedly pulled out some silver. Shen Mansion wasn't in the inner city. It was a small courtyard in a quiet alley in the outer city. As long as I had the sweet candied hawthorn, I didn't care about the peeling walls. The moment I entered, I ran off to play with the vegetables in the garden. Hearing the commotion, a slightly older boy came out. He was very thin, with skin so pale it made his eyes look especially big under the sunlight. His pupils shimmered with a faint blue. He called out timidly, "Father." I scratched my cheek and met the boy's gaze. I gave him a big grin. My handsome second father wasn't as warm with his son as he was with me. He only nodded lightly and said, "I'll cook dinner. Yenzhou. Watch your little sister." Shen Yenzhou lowered his eyes and gripped the hem of his clothes. Yes. I didn't notice the tension between father and son. It was rare to meet someone my age. And I wasn't shy at all. I grabbed Shen Yenzhou's hand and dragged him toward the vegetable patch. "Brother, play with me. There's a huge bug on the cabbage, let's keep it as a pet." "Wow, this carrot is bald. Just like my daddy." Shen Yenzhou, forced to play along, looked confused. "Isn't your daddy my father?" I puffed out my chest and pulled out the bald carrot that looked like my daddy. Counting on my fingers. Daddy is daddy. And second father is second father. There's only one daddy, but lots of second fathers. That's right. Any minister my father trusted, he made me call second father. Some refused, while others gritted their teeth and accepted. After Shen Yenzhou realized I wasn't some illegitimate child that had suddenly appeared, he warmed up to me. We chatted for a while. Then he crouched down, wiped the mud off my hands with a paper handkerchief, and poked the soft flesh on the back of my hand. "Why do you have little dimples here?" His eyelashes were thick and long. When he looked down, they were like two little fans, making me want to reach out and touch them. I was a little annoyed by his question. But then I remembered his mother had passed away early, and his face showed signs of an early death. I felt a kindred sympathy and let go of my anger. "Brother, from now on, I'll share my meat with you. We'll grow dimples together." Shen Yenzhou was about to nod when the figure in the kitchen came out carrying fragrant dishes. The mouth-watering smell hit me, and I instantly forgot what I'd just said about sharing meat. I hugged the plate and refused to let go. 11. The Shen family didn't have any servants. An elderly woman from next door came every day to clean the yard and cook a hot meal after all. The Shadow Guard commander couldn't be home every day. When night fell, the oil lamp was lit, and my handsome second father gently reminded me it was time to sleep. I refused to listen. I clung to him, rolling around and throwing a tantrum. "Tell me a story." His only son had always been quiet and obedient. He had never encountered such a troublesome toddler before. Awkwardly, he began telling stories about the past, hoping to lull me to sleep before he went on his mission. In the end, he fell asleep himself. While I was still wide awake, I looked at Shen Ji, who had dozed off leaning against the headboard. Confirming that the death omen on his face had dissipated, I tiptoed out of the room, put on my shoes, and ran off to find the older boy. When Shen Yenzhou was dragged into the room, his face was full of drowsiness. He had no choice but to let me maneuver him onto his father's bed. It was the first time father and son had ever slept in the same bed. I looked left, then right, before finding a cozy corner to burrow into. Satisfied, I closed my eyes. The next day at noon, sunlight slipped through the cracks in the window and toasted my belly before I finally rubbed my eyes and crawled out of bed. Shen Yenzhou was reading under the eaves, while Shen Ji practiced his swordplay in the courtyard. Next door, Granny Lu was picking vegetables in her garden, muttering to herself, "Oh dear, where did that big, white radish go? I was planning to pickle it yesterday." I guiltily twisted my fingers together, then scurried back to hide the bald radish properly. "Master Shen, did you hear? Last night, the earth turned over at Yanjing Mountain outside the city. So many people died." Shen Ji was just grabbing my hair, unsure where to start combing, when Granny Lu's words made him freeze mid-motion. Yenjing Mountain. That was exactly where he was supposed to go last night. If I hadn't pestered him, he would have followed fate's course. Gravely wounded, then crushed by the earth's upheaval, I swung my legs, speaking with righteous confidence. Godfather, I want 2 little buns on top. 12. After 2 days at the Shen household, it was time to leave. Clutching the bald radish, I reluctantly said goodbye to the little boy. When you're free, you have to come play with me. Okay. Don't forget we're bound by life and death, even if that life was just a cabbage worms. Alright. Shen Yanzhou nodded. Back at the palace, the moment I spotted that bright yellow figure, I sprinted over as fast as my legs could carry me. Father, Abayo missed you so much. Xie Jingyuan's face was full of grievance, but his hands moved expertly to scoop me up. I can see you were having far too much fun. I pulled out the bald radish, trying to prove my longing. Father, look, what are you doing with a radish? To remember someone by the sight of it. Xie Jingyuan, Shen Ji, who had followed close behind, chimed in supportively. To understand such a principle at such a young age, Your Majesty, establishing the crown princess should not be delayed. Someone, draft the decree. My father could no longer hold back, waving his hand grandly. My eldest daughter, Xia Yunan, is the first heir of the imperial clan, chosen by heaven. From this day forward, she shall be crowned crown princess, take her rightful place in the Eastern Palace, and uphold the eternal order. This time, head eunuch Dequan didn't stop him. Instead, he smiled and handed over the brush. 13. The storm this decree stirred up in the court went without saying. Ministers knelt in droves to protest. Your Majesty, think twice. Since ancient times, it has always been the crown prince who inherits the lineage. Where is there such a thing as a crown princess? Why not take in more virtuous women from good families to spread the imperial bloodline? The most vocal opponent was Empress Lin herself. In recent years, my father had never favored her again. Her resentment had deepened, and ever since her house arrest was lifted, she never gave me a kind look. I will not agree to this. I was sitting on the dragon throne, drawing little turtles on my father's imperial decree. At the sound of her voice, my brush slipped, the turtle turned into a toad. The beautiful woman stormed into the imperial study, her voice sharp. Your Majesty, women are meant to marry in the end. How can one be made heir? Why not wait until our legitimate son is born? Abayo is your child too. Hearing my name, I turned around and saw my father's eyebrows nodding like caterpillars. He sighed. I'm nearly 50 now, old enough to be a grandfather. To have a child at all is a blessing. Stop clinging to unrealistic dreams. Seeing she couldn't sway Xie Jingyuan, Empress Lin came over and shook my shoulders, forcing a strained smile. Good daughter, let your mother find you a fine husband. When you grow up, you'll marry him, serve your husband, and raise your children. Want that? Be nice. I pouted, as if I'd heard something terrifying, and burst into earth-shattering sobs. Boo-hoo-hoo. Abayo doesn't want to get married. I want to be crown princess and take care of father and Grand Empress Dowager. The Grand Empress Dowager, who had just stepped into the study, broke into a gratified smile. Don't be afraid. My precious heart, your grandmother is here. She scooped me up and soothed me, her sharp gaze cutting through Empress Lin like a blade. Warning, the Empress has overstepped. The inner palace must not interfere in state affairs. And so, at the age of 5.5, I became the crown princess of the Great Show, as fresh as a dewy flower. Rumor had it that countless cups and bowls were smashed in the inner palace afterward. But just 2 days into the role, I regretted it. I had to get up before dawn to listen to the Grand Tutor's lectures, couldn't eat pastries or play with toys, and got my palms smacked if I daydreamed. It was an absolute tragedy. 14. On the day after the New Year's celebrations, Granny Gui, the attendant by my mother's side, suddenly appeared at the door of the Imperial Study Hall, bowing respectfully. Your Highness, the Empress deeply misses you. She has specially arranged a flower-viewing banquet in the palace and sent me to invite you to join her. All right. I'll go. Hearing that I could skip class openly, I couldn't wait to grab Granny Gui's hand and head out. The flower viewing banquet was set in a pavilion by the water. Besides the imperial consorts, many noble ladies from the court were also present. I looked up and happened to see Empress Lin holding a little girl, speaking to her with soft, gentle brows. Lady Song is truly blessed. Even your youngest daughter is so adorable. Just looking at her fills my heart with joy. You flatter me, Your Majesty. This girl is a little wild one. The woman speaking had a round, kind face, truly blessed in appearance. But her lip was chapped, a clear sign that she would soon suffer the loss of a daughter. The little girl was as pink and round as a dumpling, with curved willow leaf brows. When she smiled, she looked 3 parts like Empress Lin. Her voice was crisp. To be favored by Your Majesty is Mingzhu's honor. Ah, a soul reborn across 2 lifetimes, bearing the mark of destiny. I stood there sizing her up, when suddenly I noticed something strange, that destiny had clearly been stolen. In just 2 more days, the traces would be completely hidden. When Empress Lin saw me, the smile on her face instantly faded. Don't you know to greet your elders when you see them? The noble ladies all scrambled to their feet in panic. It is we who should be paying respects to the crown princess. Today, only seniority matters, no matter how noble one's status. One must not lose decorum. After scolding me thoroughly, she pushed Gu Mingzhu in front of me and said in a tone that brooked no argument, "This is the companion I have chosen for you. From now on, Mingzhu will attend the imperial study hall with you." I looked up and found the peach blossom birthmark on the girl's earlobe utterly obnoxious. "I don't want her," I refused, then reached out and pointed past her toward a little girl cowering in the corner who had been bullied. "She's prettier. She can be my companion." The little girl froze for a moment, her moist eyes flickering with a glimmer of hope, only to be shoved into the pond the very next second. A bastard with no father. How dare she try to take my sister's things? 15. The ones who pushed her were Gu Mingzhu's 2 older brothers. The Gu family had 8 sons before finally having a daughter, and Gu Mingzhu was the apple of everyone's eye. Seeing Gu Mingzhu rejected, Lady Gu's expression soured as well. She showed no intention of scolding her 2 sons. Nor did she call for anyone to save the girl who was on the verge of drowning. "That child was born to my husband's distant cousin's daughter. She has sticky fingers she stole from Mingzhu before. Your Highness, do you truly wish to choose her as a companion reader?" Empress Lin wrinkled her nose in disgust. Such a filthy little thing. Better to throw her out of the manor and not bother saving her. Fortunately, I had plenty of people by my side. At my command, they immediately jumped in to rescue her. When no one was near me, Gu Mingzhu stormed over, lowering her voice to threaten. "I don't care what stray you are. One day, Father Emperor will adopt me as his daughter. Don't you dare try to steal my place as the princess, or my 8 brothers will make you pay." I frowned, counting on my fingers in confusion. "But Daddy won't let me marry 8 people into my family. You'd better give up on that idea." Gu Mingzhu stomped her foot, furious. "You shameless." Just then, the little girl was pulled up from the water. She didn't cry, soaking wet. She kowtowed to me once, then turned to Lady Gu and said, "Cousin's wife, I will always remember the kindness you've shown me in raising me, but I still wish to be Her Highness the Crown Princess's companion reader." I broke into a grin, trotted over, and took her hand, patting my chest as I promised. "From now on, I'll take you to study and share my pastries with you." Great, finally, someone to sit through the Grand Tutor's lectures with me. After saying that, I ordered the attendants, and under everyone's astonished gaze, I clenched my little fist and waved my hand. "Throw those 2 in too. Wash the filth out of their mouths." The 2 Gu brothers let out screams like pigs being slaughtered. I held my head high and walked away, leaving no trace of my heroic deed. I had no idea that the little girl I casually saved would one day become a legendary female chancellor, her name etched in history. Later, General Gu attacked me in court for misconduct, demanding an explanation. But my protective father stood firm. "My child is but a toddler. What ill intentions could she have? Clearly, it's your son who was in the wrong. To appease the Gu family, Gu Mingzhu still became one of my companion readers. Prince Zhao's heir, Zhao Jingyu, was also squeezed in. If not for my birth, he would have been adopted by Xie Jingyuan. And the most delightful surprise was that my last companion reader turned out to be my sworn brother, Shen Yenzhou. The study hall suddenly became a lively mess, with so many unruly students to teach. The grand tutor's hair turned grayer. At least he wasn't just nagging me anymore. Every now and then, he'd stroke his beard and sigh. Alas, when it comes to poetry and prose, you pose no threat to me, but in the art of teaching, you make me lose all face. Of course, Shen Yenzhou was the exception, gifted and hardworking. Unlike me with my lazy, on-and-off efforts, he was the grand tutor's favorite student, even though I couldn't remember much from before I shrank. My deep-seated reverence for top students remained. Every time Shen Yenzhou gently urged me to practice my calligraphy, I'd obediently huddle like a quail. Gu Qingxi couldn't read and had the weakest foundation, but she gritted her teeth and studied day and night. Zhao Jingyu and Gu Mingzhu formed their own faction. Both despised me but had to swallow their resentment. Zhao Jingyu wanted to prove he was more fit to be the crown prince than I was. There was a faint trace of purple aura around his face, barely visible, only becoming clear when he was near Gu Mingzhu. Gu Mingzhu, meanwhile, believed I had stolen her position and kept currying favor with Empress Lin, completely unaware that she herself was the one living in a stolen nest. Exhausted from writing, I flopped onto the table and nearly shouted, "Stupid hand! Hurry up and write." Before I knew it, it was time for Father Emperor's birthday, to be his sweet little comfort. I specially asked Shen Yenzhou to find a birthday gift for me outside the palace, but the boy who never broke his promise had been missing for 2 days now. Your Highness, are we really going to crawl through this dog hole? Gu Qingxi scratched her head and asked. Of course. This is the only exit I found after searching the entire palace. After finally shaking off the attending servants, I brushed the dust off my clothes, bent down, and started crawling through. I need to see for myself to feel at ease. I'll be back before dark. Father Emperor won't notice. I didn't realize 2 little tails were following behind me, relying on my photographic memory. Gu Qingxi and I trotted on our short legs and found the Shen residence. The wooden door creaked open, and Granny Lu poked her head out in a panic. I stepped forward. Auntie, we're looking for Shen Yenzhou. Is he home? Oh, it's you, little girl. Granny Lu recognized me and said frantically, Zhou'er hasn't been home for 2 days. Master Shen is also missing. I don't know what to do. That boy is always well behaved. I'm afraid he's fallen into the hands of kidnappers. Lately, the city's been crawling with them. They even dared to snatch the son of a censor. You two hurry home. Hearing this, I didn't waste a second. I blew the bone whistle hanging around my neck, and several shadowy figures appeared. Your Highness, find me a child. Leave one person to protect me. I gestured to describe Shen Yenzhou's appearance. My little face set in a serious expression. After giving orders to the shadow guards, I studied Gu Qingxi's features and dragged her eastward. Encountering east brings trouble. A trapped dragon in distress. You'll face a small mishap today. Nothing major. Gu Qingxi looked completely bewildered. Not long after, we reached a lively market filled with lion dances and acrobatics. Sure enough, as soon as we stepped into the crowd, someone pressed a paper handkerchief over our mouths and noses, and my consciousness faded into chaos. I vaguely heard someone say, Boss, these 2 girls are pretty good looking. We'll fetch a nice price. I thought, I absolutely cannot let Father Emperor find out I've been sold again. Meanwhile, back at the palace, chaos had erupted over my disappearance. When I woke up again, Shen Yenzhou was anxiously wiping the dirt off my face with a cloth. Around us, children were crying. Your Highness, Yunnan, how did you get caught too? To save you. I glanced at the deathly aura spreading across his features, made a shush gesture, and began surveying my surroundings. The dim cellar was packed with iron cages, all holding children in fine clothes clearly from noble families. These kidnappers had a very specific target. Gu Qingxi was still unconscious, lying in a cage across from me. Besides her, I spotted two familiar faces. Show were the male and female leads here too. Gu Mingzhu was sobbing quietly in fear, while Zhao Jingyu was shaking the iron cage and shouting, "Let me out of here, or I'll have your worthless heads." I just stood there, speechless, absolutely mortified. "Shut it." A scar-faced man stomped down at the noise, brandishing an axe. "Keep yapping, and I'll chop you up first." Zhao Jingyu immediately clamped his mouth shut. Once the scar-faced man was gone, Gu Mingzhu spun around and dumped all her resentment on me. "This is all your fault. If you hadn't run off, we wouldn't have been caught too." I blinked innocently. "I didn't ask you to follow me." Shen Yanzhou frowned and stepped in front of me protectively. "Watch your tone. If anything happens to Yunnan, His Majesty's wrath is something none of you can bear." Xia Jingyuan might have cultivated restraint over the years and stopped killing indiscriminately. But that didn't mean he was a benevolent ruler. His only daughter was the sheath that held his blade in check. 19. Probably because they didn't take a bunch of kids seriously. The cellar had no dedicated guard. I poked my head out and whispered with the other children for a bit. And soon their sobbing stopped. In the same cage as Gu Qingxi was an older boy, pale as a ghost, barely clinging to life. I pulled a small porcelain bottle from my embroidered pouch and handed it over. "It's a life-saving pill father left me. Feed it to him." No herb was more precious than a life. Gu Qingxi took it, pried the boy's lips open, and forced it down. The boy slowly caught his breath, turned to me, and whispered, "Thank you. My father is the left chancellor. If we get out, I'll make sure you're rewarded." I didn't bother answering him. Instead, I turned and crouched down to talk to Shen Yanzhou. "Ah. I haven't written my calligraphy practice for today. I hope the Grand Tutor isn't too mad." Shen Yanzhou gently patted my head. "Don't worry. I'll write it for you." "How did you get caught?" "He told me it was Granny Lu next door who drugged the food her son had been captured. And the kidnappers threatened to break his legs if she didn't hand Shen Yanzhou over. The irony is, her son used to live a life of debauchery and nearly beat his own mother to death. My father saved her and gave her a way to make a living. Not long after, the kidnappers hurriedly moved us into the cargo hold of a wagon, covering us with reeds in an attempt to sneak out of the city. Don't get greedy. Getting the master's job done comes first. The entire capital is crawling with imperial guards now. If we don't leave, we're all dead." There were 7 or 8 of them, every single one vicious and menacing. "What's that mad emperor up to?" the scar-faced man grumbled. "It's not like we stole his kid. Why send out the entire imperial guard?" Eavesdropping, I thought to myself. Well, you kind of did. Gu Mingzhu and Zhao Jingyu struggled and refused to cooperate. The scar-faced man knocked Gu Mingzhu out with a backhand but held back with Zhao Jingyu. The wagon rolled toward the city gates, only to find them tightly shut. Heavily guarded. "Officer, this shipment is urgent. Could you make an exception? By His Majesty's decree, no one enters or leaves." Shen Yanzhou spent a long time prying open a tiny crack. I gathered my strength and blew 3 sharp blasts on my bone whistle. As the children suddenly burst into screams, the shadow guards materialized. "Seize these scoundrels." The black-armored guards swarmed in. Seeing the situation was hopeless, the scar-faced man's heart hardened. He swung his axe straight down at where Shen Yanzhou and I stood. "Shen Ji, you bastard. You destroyed my whole family. Today, I'll make you taste the pain of losing a son." Shen Yanzhou instinctively shielded me with his body, his young voice trembling. "Your Highness, don't look." Shen Ji, rushing over from a distance, caught sight of this, and his eyes nearly burst with fury. Ding! A poison-tipped needle, deadly at the slightest scratch, embedded itself in the scar-faced man's forehead. He stared in disbelief at the gold bracelet in my hand, then crashed to the ground. I jingled the bells on the bracelet and gently soothed the boy still clinging to me. "Don't be scared. I'm here." 20. On the way back to the palace, I was figuring out how to face my father's anger. But the moment I saw that familiar figure in imperial yellow, tears started streaming down my face before I could stop them. Father. Boo-hoo. I almost never saw you again. Xie Jingyuan's tight expression instantly softened into panic when he saw me crying my eyes out. He gritted his teeth and gave my palm a couple of light smacks. See if you ever dare sneak out of the palace again. Do you have any idea how worried I was? If something happened to you, do you want your father and grandmother to bury the young while they're still alive? He didn't dare say it aloud, but the moment he couldn't find his little one anywhere in the palace, he was already calculating how many people he'd have to kill. I pouted. I didn't go alone. I brought my study companion. Xie Jingyuan let out a bitter laugh. Then I'll punish her. Oh no. So this was Gu Qingxi's minor calamity. Thinking about that only made me cry harder. Xie Jingyuan didn't know whether to hit me or scold me, his hand frozen in midair until the Empress Dowager arrived. My precious little one. Let grandmother see if you're hurt. I held up my finger with a scraped patch of skin and sniffled. Grandmother. It hurts here. The Empress Dowager shot Xie Jingyuan a glare, then pulled me into her arms to soothe me. Why are you yelling at a Bao? If you've got the guts, go wipe out all 9 generations of those criminals. A Bao did a great thing this time. Those kidnapped children are all treasures to the ministers. If something happened to all of them, the court would be in chaos. My little stunt had actually won me a lot of goodwill. While I was still acting cute and playing innocent, Shen Ji walked in, his clothes soaked in blood. He knelt and reported. Your servant is incompetent. All the criminals have taken poison and killed themselves. They left only a letter, threatening to demand the evidence of corruption in Qinzhou. Or else they'd take my son's life. What a pity. Xie Jingyuan lowered his gaze. I was looking forward to grinding their bones to dust. Everyone present was a seasoned fox. They could all see that there was someone else pulling the strings behind this. Without my interference, Shen Yanzhou would have been dead for sure. Shen Ji knocked his head heavily 3 times on the ground. Your servant and my son will henceforth pledge loyalty to the crown princess, even unto death. Xie Jingyuan didn't stop him. In fact, he seemed pleased with the outcome. I mentioned how the scar-faced man had treated Zhao Jingyu differently. Xie Jingyuan was silent for a long time, then looked helplessly at the Empress Dowager. Qinzhou was the fief of Zhao Wang. Zhao Jinghuan and Zhao Wang was his own full-blooded younger brother. The Empress Dowager closed her eyes and stroked my head. I'm old now. I only hope to live long enough to see a Bao grow up. If there's evidence, Your Majesty need not hold back. Just spare his life. When word came that I had returned safely, Empress Lin showed no reaction at all. Instead, she rewarded Gu Mingzhu generously as a gesture of reassurance. Xie Jingyuan had dealt with a large number of officials in Qinzhou, but he left the Prince of Zhao untouched, merely docking his salary. 21. Time passed, the years slipping by like water. At first, the concubines and imperial clan members still hoped for joyful news. But 9 years went by, and I remained the only child in the palace. Gradually, everyone gave up hope. The concubines lost interest in vying for favor and instead turned to currying favor with me. Only Empress Lin still believed she could use her secret elixirs to bear another prince. But Father Emperor was getting on in years. To cultivate his health, he rarely set foot in the harem, and when he did, it was only to sit with Consort Qiao. One day, Empress Lin suddenly sent someone to summon me. The sickly grandson of the left chancellor had inexplicably taken to sending letters and trinkets through intermediaries, saying things like, I can never repay your life-saving grace, so I must offer myself to you. I shot back immediately. The medicine costs 3,026 taels. The national treasury was empty. As the future sovereign, I had to be frugal. No one was getting off easy with sweet talk. Shen Yanzhou glanced at the jade hairpin on the palace attendant's tray, a faint furrow appearing between his brows before he smoothed his expression into one of gentle courtesy. Since Her Majesty the Empress has summoned you, Your Highness might as well go see her. Fine. I nodded. Take care of the hairpin for me. I would be honored to serve Your Highness. After I left, The young man's face remained impassive as he snapped the white jade hairpin in two and tossed it into the lake, though the red marks from his clenched fingers lingered on his palm. 22. Before I even stepped into Phoenix Cry Palace, I could hear laughter and chatter inside. Through the screen, Gu Mingzhu was leaning against Empress Lin's knees, telling amusing stories that made the Empress's face brim with affection. I wonder which young master will be fortunate enough to marry our little darling. Please, Your Majesty, take a look for Mingzhu and find me a good husband. Empress Lin tapped the girl's forehead and said 3 times. Good, good, good. Then she turned to me, and the smile on her face instantly faded. Since you're here, sit down. I picked up the teacup, took a sip, and said flatly, if mother has something to say, just say it. I have matters to attend to. Bam! Empress Lin slammed the table and stood up, her chest heaving with anger. You rebellious girl. Is this how you speak to me? Gu Mingzhu quickly patted her back to soothe her. Your Highness. Her Majesty only chose this marriage for your own good. If that gleeful look in her eyes were a little less obvious, I might have believed her. If it's so good, you take it, I said dismissively, turning to leave. Stop right there. Empress Lin reined in her anger, forcing an unnatural smile as she handed me a portrait. Take a look at your future husband first. Your cousin is well-read, handsome, and extremely filial. Marrying him will guarantee you a good life. Wait, I cut her off, looking into her eyes, now lined with wrinkles. Mother means the good husband you've picked for me is my cousin from the Lin family, who is still a convicted criminal. The smile on her face faded. What makes your cousin unworthy of you? Once you marry him, His Majesty will naturally pardon the Jiang family. So that was her game. Father will never agree to this marriage. Mother, don't bring it up again. If you insist on marrying him, once the rice is cooked. Since mother can't take a hint, I'll be direct. My gaze turned cold, and I spoke each word clearly. I would rather marry a pig than give up my position as crown princess to marry into the Lin family. With that, I swept out, the sound of a shattered teacup echoing behind me. Outside Phoenix Cry Palace, the eunuchs and maids were holding red envelopes, their faces full of joy as they whispered, Consort Qiao is so generous. How long has it been since there was good news in the palace? Who knew Consort Qiao was pregnant with a dragon heir? I hear the chief imperial physician is certain it's a little prince. Me. Could father's old tree still blossom? 23. The news spread, and everyone was stunned. The calmest of all was Father Emperor, who wore a thoughtful expression. Imperial grandmother, on the other hand, was ecstatic, repeatedly muttering, Ancestors be praised. Gifts poured into Consort Qiao's palace like a river. For a time, everyone waited to see how I, the crown princess, would react. But I had no mind to dwell on father's signs of childlessness or Consort Qiao's signs of multiple partners. Thinking too much about it just made my head feel green. Qinzhou was suffering a severe drought. The farmland had cracked open, yielding nothing, and countless people were displaced. Rice prices were skyrocketing. If the court couldn't control it, even more would die. Compared to a natural disaster, what was an unborn child? I was so busy I barely had time to breathe. After finally discussing a disaster relief plan with the ministers, I got up to grab a piece of date cake to fill my stomach. The next second, my vision went black, and I collapsed straight to the ground. Your Highness. The imperial physicians rushed over, and after taking my pulse, their faces turned pale. This is bad. It's a heart-devouring goo. It can only be cured with a specialized goo antidote, but the art of goo poison had long been lost. The entire Eastern Palace was turned upside down. And finally, a clue was found on an undergarment. The embroiderer kowtowed in terror. It wasn't me. This garment was sent by Her Majesty the Empress. I drifted in and out of a hazy stupor, but a sense of calm settled over me. Death tribulation had finally arrived. Late but not absent. Through the haze, I heard Father Emperor and Imperial Grandmother's pleas, completely ignoring the danger of the goo poison. Ah, Bao. Wake up. You haven't tried on father's new dragon robe yet. Grandmother doesn't want a grandson anymore. Ah Bao. Wake up. Gu Qingxi stayed by my bedside, tending to me with care. Rumors began to spread among the people, saying that Crown Princess Xia Yunan was a demon star descended to earth, while the little prince in consort Xiao's womb was a true dragon of fortune. The demon star was suppressed by the fortune star, destined to amount to nothing. That night, Xia Jingyuan, who hadn't slept in days, carried a bowl of abortion medicine to consort Xiao's palace. He watched her drink it himself, and blood appeared on the spot. On the 10th day of my coma, my breathing had grown so faint it was barely there. The palace quietly began preparing funeral rites. Xia Jingyuan stayed by my bedside all night, unable to close his eyes. His trembling fingers brushed through my hair. I raised you with my own hands, and now I have to send you off myself. Ah Bao, how can father bear it? When the first light of dawn appeared on the horizon, Shen Yanzhou, who had traveled 1,000 miles, ran 2 horses to death before finally bringing back the Gu antidote. 24. I opened my eyes in confusion and was startled. Father, why aren't you at court? What are you doing here? Xia Jingyuan, usually so imposing before others, had tears glistening in his eyes. His voice choked several times. You're awake. That's all that matters. All thanks to the Shen boy this time. His birth mother was a direct descendant of the Gu poison lineage, and it took considerable effort to retrieve the antidote. Shen Yanzhou. A ripple stirred in my heart, but before it could spread, I heard my father grit his teeth and say, if you just go like this, I'll have the entire nation buried alive with you. Cough. Cough. I choked and quickly stopped my tyrannical father. You can't do that. The attending palace servants came to help me wash up. Seeing me lively and full of energy, Xia Jingyuan stroked his graying beard with relief and sighed. I've deposed your mother from her position as empress and confined her to the cold palace. Don't blame your father for being heartless. If I let her keep stirring up trouble, this little life of yours would be finished sooner or later at her hands. I nodded. I understand, father. As for the child in consort Xiao's womb, you don't need to worry. That's not my seed. Huh. I lifted my head in shock. Xia Jingyuan touched his increasingly thinning hairline. Quite sorrowful. I'm old. So she hooked up with the Prince of Zhao. The entire palace is filled with my eyes and ears. Only that fool thought she was flawless. I thought to myself, that's a lot of information. 25. After resting in bed for a few days and being declared fully recovered by the imperial physician, I first went to visit grandmother. The old lady's illness had hit her like a mountain. She clutched my hand and begged, Spare your uncle's life. All right. Afterward, I went to the cold palace. By the crumbling red walls, a few winter-sweet trees were planted. A frail figure leaned by the window. Having aged so much in such a short time, there wasn't even a brazier in the room. Mother. She jerked her head up and lunged at me. Why aren't you dead yet? What good would my death do you? Mother. Heh heh heh. Empress Lin cursed madly, her face twisted with rage. You're nothing but a disaster and a curse. My Kaiyun died because of you, and you turned a blind eye to the Jiang family. If only you were dead, His Majesty would favor me again, and I could give birth to a little prince unlike you, cold and heartless. What a ridiculous reason. You're wrong, I said, my heart now utterly calm. You could lay hands on your own flesh and blood. So why is it strange that I turned a cold shoulder to the Jiang family? That's the true inheritance. You schemed and plotted for a prince. But you forgot if I ascend the throne, you'd still be the Empress Dowager. Empress Lin froze, then collapsed to the ground, an endless tide of regret surging in her eyes. 26. After recovering, I returned to the imperial study. The grand tutor was too old, so a new teacher had been assigned. When Shen Yanzhou saw me step through the door, his eyes lit up involuntarily. Then, as if remembering something, they dimmed and fell. Your Highness. Gu Qingxi rushed over and hugged me tightly, breathing in deeply. I'm so glad you're alive. I survived a great calamity, I said. patting her shoulder. Thank you for your care these past days. Your Highness need not thank me. Qingxi will always remember your kindness. I noticed her increasingly prominent destiny-bearing features and hinted. Qingxi, don't you think you look a lot like Lady Gu? She paused, her gaze drifting toward Gu Mingzhu, who was playing in the pavilion with Zhao Jingyu, a complex look in her eyes. As a child, I once hoped for it, but now I don't want to. What belongs to you, after all, can't be taken away so easily. I ran over to Shen Yenzhou, pulled out a piece of chestnut cake, and handed it to him. A thank you gift. The young man smiled softly, expertly wrapping it in paper napkins, reluctant to eat it all at once. Your Highness, Zhou doesn't want the cake. Then what do you want? You. That murmur was too soft, scattering in the wind. I didn't catch it. What? Nothing. Just a joke. As long as it's from your Highness, I'll like it. Shen Yenzhou lowered his eyes, hiding the surging thoughts within. I've got it. I clapped my hands. There's a lantern festival on Qiqiao Festival. You'll come with me, and I'll buy you the biggest lantern there. 27. Before the Qiqiao Festival arrived, the Prince of Zhao, Zhao Jinghuan, raised his banner in rebellion. Fortunately, the court was well prepared and wasn't caught off guard. The timely disaster relief made the people grateful to Xie Jingyuan and the crown princess. And they all spat on the rebel Prince of Zhao. The foreign tribes entrenched at the borders took advantage of the chaos. And the western barbarian tribes were restless too, amidst internal and external troubles. I was busier than ever. Xie Jingyuan ordered me to personally lead the army to Qinzhou to suppress the rebellion. You must win the military power yourself. Only then will the soldiers truly respect you. I gladly accepted the order after years of martial training. Wasn't this the day I'd been waiting for? Gu Qingxi stayed behind in the Eastern Palace to handle state affairs, while Shen Yenzhou served as a military strategist accompanying me, the day the Prince of Zhao rebelled. Zhao Jingyu became a prisoner. The Gu family hastily arranged a marriage for Gu Mingzhu. According to reports from the secret guards, Gu Mingzhu cried out, saying Zhao Jingyu was the true dragon, and I was just a fake. I had no reaction. But Gu Qingxi was furious when she heard it. On the second day after I set out on the campaign, she took the evidence of her origins and walked into Lady Gu's courtyard. 28. Relying on my ability to read faces to avoid misfortune, I arrived safely in Qinzhou. The Prince of Zhao's army was demoralized and no real threat. The tough nut to crack was the finely crafted weapons of the foreign tribes. I improved the crossbows and catapults. And under the devastating power of the repeating crossbows, Zhao's army retreated step by step. In the final battle, I accidentally fell off a cliff. Shen Yenzhou didn't hesitate for a moment and jumped after me. Luckily, there was a river at the bottom. I suffered minor injuries. But Shen Yenzhou, who had cushioned my fall, was unconscious. The young man had a face like jade, with delicate features. I tore off a piece of my clothes to bandage his wounds, then carried him on my back to find a stone cave to shelter from the cold. As evening fell, I lit a campfire. Suddenly, I saw the firelight dancing on his face. The unconscious Shen Yenzhou's cheeks were flushed, and he kept murmuring, Yunnan, Yunnan. I reached out to touch his forehead. Damn. He had a high fever. It was cold at night, and he was shivering from the fever, crying out that he was cold. I had no choice but to take off both our outer robes and use my body heat to warm him. When I unbuttoned his shirt, a barely healed scar was starkly visible over his heart. Suddenly, I remembered what the Imperial Medical Academy had once said: the reason the antidote for the heart-loss goo was so hard to find was because it required heart's blood as a catalyst. 29. At the break of dawn, Shen Yenzhou woke up, seeing the two of us embracing. The tips of his ears turned blood-red. Your Highness, I'm sorry. I apologize for the intrusion. I smiled gently, holding up a firefly wrapped in a strip of cloth. Look. I made you a lantern. 30. The search party soon found us. The Prince of Zhao's forces were completely wiped out. On the day we returned to the court in triumph, the soldiers looked at me with eyes full of respect. No one dislikes a commander who keeps casualties to a minimum. Between me and Shen Yenzhou, there was a subtle shift. Xia Jingyuan stood atop the city gate from early morning, waiting as the common folk came out on their own to welcome him. I lifted my crimson-tasseled spear and spurred my horse to the base of the wall. Your son, unworthy of your trust, has not failed. The cheers surged like a tide. All songs of praise for me. It wasn't until I returned to the Eastern Palace that I learned Gu Qingxi had unveiled her own origins. She found the midwife from back then, confirming the existence of the birthmark. In truth, General Gu would have believed even without the birthmark, because Gu Qingxi looked so much like the young lady Gu, while Gu Mingzhu resembled neither him nor his wife, bearing a faint likeness to Empress Lin instead. The midwife claimed it was arranged by the Empress. The child of the cousin was swapped with the daughter born to Lady Gu. That cousin was none other than Empress Lin's elder brother's mistress, and Gu Mingzhu was the cousin who nearly replaced me in the palace. Gu Qingxi had planned to feign ignorance, but she couldn't stomach Gu Mingzhu's slander against me, since she relies on her family background to act with impunity. I'll strip her of her support. I promptly added Gu Mingzhu to the exile list. What was hers? Not a single bit less. Sigh. I'm truly kind. She should be quite happy to reunite with her family. Shen Yenzhou stifled a laugh, his eyes curving into crescent moons. Your Highness is the best person under heaven. This time, he could finally openly dispose of those gifts sent by the young gentleman with ulterior motives. 31. The Prince of Zhao had his legs severed and was confined to a detached palace. Zhao Jingyu and Gu Mingzhu were exiled together to the western barbarian lands. They bickered the entire way. Zhao Jingyu, nursing a grudge over Gu Mingzhu's past engagement, beat and berated her. Gu Mingzhu, in a fit of desperation, poisoned their food and fled in the chaos. She was lucky. Frantically running, she ran into the western barbarian Prince Amur, who saved her. As the new year approached, vassal states sent envoys to offer congratulations. Xia Jingyuan had been frequently bringing up the matter of selecting consorts lately. Ah Bao, your father is old. When will you let me hold a grandchild? I know you like that, Shen boy. But choosing a few more will spread the branches and leaves. I wiped the sweat from my brow and made up an excuse to slip away. The New Year's banquet was hosted by Gu Qingxi. The table piled high with delicacies from land and sea. I was just about to sneak a cup of wine when Gu Qingxi caught me red-handed. Your Highness is still young. No drinking allowed. The little girl puffed out her round face, looking dead serious. I cupped my hands in a bow. Lady officer, have mercy. Just let me have one taste. In the midst of the playful banter, the Western barbarian delegation entered. The envoy was dark-skinned and towering, adorned with bone ornaments, dragging an iron chain that pulled a cage containing a giant panda. We pay homage to the heavenly Khan. The Western barbarians wish to present our sacred beast to the celestial court. Good. You shall be rewarded. Xia Jingyuan, seated on the dragon throne, was about to call for the next performer when the envoy suddenly dropped to one knee. We beseech the heavenly Khan to grant us a princess. If the princess marries into our tribe, we are willing to serve the celestial court. Slaying rebels. The banquet fell silent. I, watching from the sidelines, thought, oh ho, this is aimed at me. Bang! A white porcelain dragon-patterned cup shattered on the ground, heralding the emperor's wrath. Across from me, Shen Yenzhou had somehow dropped his smile, staring at the Western barbarian envoy with a blank expression. The minister of the court of state ceremonies wiped his sweat and stepped forward to smooth things over. Prince Amur, our great Zhou has only a crown princess, no princess. Amur. A spark of realization hit Muisant, this the Western barbarian prince who saved Gu Mingzhu. 32. Amur refused to rise. Then let the heavenly Khan grant us the crown princess. I cracked melon seeds and looked up, watching as the civil and military officials all rolled up their sleeves. Bah! How dare a mountain barbarian covet the crown princess? Take a piss and look at your own reflection. What kind of scum are you? Before asking for a marriage, see if your own doorstep is worthy. The white-haired grand tutor, usually the most refined, was now spewing a torrent of profanity with remarkable civility. Amor was scolded until his face turned crimson, veins bulging on his forehead. He didn't know that the outwardly calm Xie Jingyuan was already plotting how to trample the Western barbarians. Enough. I stood up. Friends come from afar, and all guests are welcome, but those far away will be punished without fail. From our generation onward, the princesses of Great Zhou will never marry into foreign lands. 33. The following year, Xie Jingyuan personally led a campaign, pacifying the northern frontier and subduing the western barbarians, capturing several enemy cities in succession. At 50, it was the age to take risks. In the first year of Yuanchu, at 16, I ascended the throne and married Shen Yenzhou as my imperial consort. Upon hearing the news, the retired emperor rushed back overnight, bringing a group of exotic male beauties. Daughter, favor a few more, to spread the branches and leaves. I glanced at the man beside me. His expression full of grievance. I still remembered how he had nearly annihilated the western barbarians and reluctantly declined. In the third year of Yuanchu, I abolished gender restrictions in the imperial examinations. Women were no longer confined to the inner chambers and began entering the court. In the sixth year of Yuanchu, I gave birth to a pair of twins with Shen Yenzhou. The Grand Empress Dowager's wish was fulfilled, and she passed away with a smile. The next year, Shen Ji died from old war wounds. On his deathbed, he grasped Shen Yenzhou's hand and said, "I failed your mother, and I failed you." Time flew by. On the day Xie Jingyuan died of illness, I kept vigil by his bedside, listening to his faint voice. "Ah, Bao, your father's greatest fortune in this life was watching you grow up. The road ahead. I can no longer accompany you." I collapsed against Shen Yenzhou's shoulder, sobbing uncontrollably. There was no one left in this world who loved me more. Dew clung to the grass, wind stripped the leaves, and autumn had arrived. Outside the window, frost and snow fell, the old giving way to the new, just like the spark of life I saw when I first came into this world. Extra chapter. Gu Qingxi's perspective. For as long as I could remember, everyone had called me a bastard with no father. My mother died in childbirth, giving birth to me, and I grew up like a weed, surviving on scraps, hungry one meal and full the next. In the Gu household, Lady Gu was a kind woman, though she thought I was the illegitimate daughter of my mother and General Gu, and was somewhat cold to me, seeing how thin and pitiful I was. She still ordered the kitchen to prepare a cold, hard coarse flour bun for me every day. The most terrifying thing in the Gu household was that gang of wild boys. They took pleasure in humiliating me, and beatings and scoldings were a daily occurrence. I never cried. I learned early on that no one would stand up for me. Gu Mingzhu treated me like a servant. She was the family's precious jewel. With just a frown, countless people would leap to her defense. My butterfly hairpin is missing, and only lure passed by my room. With one sentence, I was branded a thief. On the bitter cold winter days, I curled up in the wheat straw, watching Gu Mingzhu in her snow-white fox fur, her laughter and joy. And I thought countless times if only I could have parents and brothers like hers. Until I met the crown princess. That day, I was certain I was going to die. But instead, misfortune turned into fortune. I became her study companion. She let me live in the Eastern Palace, opening up an entirely new path for me. Only later did I realize that fate had played a colossal joke on me. Gu Mingzhu's parents were, in truth, my own parents. The Gu family wanted to make amends, but by then, I, Gu Qingxi, was already a palace secretary of the Eastern Palace. I no longer needed their compensation. I climbed step by step from a female official, all the way to becoming the female chancellor, solely to repay the crown princess's grace in lifting me up. A sovereign bestows favor upon her subject, and the subject has no way to repay it, only wishes to leave her name in history alongside her liege. Extra Chapter 2. Gu Mingzhu's perspective. I am a person who has lived two lives. In my previous life, everyone doted on me. Even the tyrannical emperor adopted me as his foster daughter. I married Crown Prince Xiao Jingyu, but after he ascended the throne, I was cast aside for losing my beauty. And I died in resentment. Heaven had eyes, allowing me to be reborn. But this life has completely changed. My foster father actually has a biological daughter, and he even established her as the crown princess. I don't believe it. Empress Lin doesn't like her at all. She must be a fake. Only I am the one everyone truly loves. I wanted Zhao Jingyu to regret his actions, but after searching around me, I found no one better than him. So I had to win his heart from childhood. I did win his heart, but he never got adopted. Xia Yunan is a woman. What right does she have to be the crown princess? Later, the prince of Zhao rebelled, and my family betrothed me to someone else. I threatened to starve myself, only to be told he was never the Gu family's daughter at all. That bastard Gu Qingxi was. I didn't believe it, but I had no choice but to accept it. On the day of my exile, I saw Zhao Jingyu again. The way he beat and scolded me was exactly the same as in my past life. Fortunately, I met Amur. Hatred drove me to disregard everything and plead with him, begging him to seek marriage with a princess of the great Zhou dynasty. I hated Xia Yunan for changing everything. Unfortunately, all I got in the end was a cup of poisoned wine, ending this absurd life. Extra Chapter 3. Shen Yanzhou's perspective. Since I could remember, I lived with my parents in the Valley of Poisonous Insects. My mother was lively and cheerful, a witch of the Gu arts. She had picked up my taciturn father only because he was good-looking. My parents were deeply in love, until my father's enemies tracked him down. After he regained his memory, he abandoned us without hesitation. Staying will only endanger you. But in the end, my mother still died saving him. Without my mother as a bridge, a mountain stood between my father and me. He was clumsy and had no idea how to raise a child. Only his cooking was passable. I always thought my father didn't love my mother or me. So when I first met the crown princess, I thought she was my father's illegitimate daughter. And I felt a surge of dislike. But she was just too adorable, like a little glutinous rice ball, with clear, bright cat-like eyes. After the misunderstanding was cleared up, I breathed a sigh of relief. That night was the first time I shared a bed with my father. And also the first time someone was willing to play with me. Father said the crown princess saved his life, and told me to treat her well. I wanted to say he didn't need to order me, would have done it anyway. Later, I became her study companion, growing up alongside her. When we were captured by slave traders, she saved me again. At some point, a strange feeling grew in my heart for her. I was happy when she was happy, and bitter when I saw other men approach her. I would always secretly throw away the gifts the left chancellor's grandson sent her. I never imagined that someone so vibrant could lie in bed, hovering between life and death. When I learned she had been struck by the heart-losing Gu, I returned to the Valley of Poisonous Insects to find my maternal grandfather. Grandfather said it required heart's blood as a catalyst, and asked if I was willing. Losing heart's blood may harm your lifespan and your ability to have children. I nodded without hesitation. I knew that my little secret hopes could only be buried deep in my heart. His Majesty would never let her marry a husband who couldn't father children. But when she said she would pick a lantern for me, my heart still pounded violently. From that moment on, I understood that in this lifetime, I would probably never escape the name Xia Yunan. I only wish to grow old with you, side by side. The end of the full story.